Hello, hello, hello. Testing, testing. Hello, hello, hello. All right, everybody, what's going on? What's going on? Hello, hello. Hello, hello. All right, you guys hear me okay? Yeah? Really good chapter? Yeah, yeah, yeah. That chapter was peak. That was a great chapter. That was a really good chapter. This was a great chapter. I remember last chapter I was kind of feeling like, not the strongest start to the backstory, but I think Oda's doing work. Like, okay, this chapter has genuine between because I read this and then I'm thinking back to Brook's previous backstory, right? And I'm just thinking to who Brook is now. He's genuinely like one of the most unique characters in storytelling, period. Like the man has gone through so many different lives in a sense, right? Like, because we know that he died once and then, now it's his second go around, right? But in a sense, it happened twice because this was his first life, what he's experiencing right now in Asperia, right? He had this whole life first, and then it was the Rumbar Pirates era, and that was like a different Brook, right? Like the Brook we have here is a very different Brook than Rumbar Pirates Brook and his experiences there. And then finally now we have him with the Straw Hats, and he's like a different person here. Like it almost feels like I don't know. Brook's story is just so wild. It is so wild and it's so sad because like a lot of the Straw Hats have had tragedies. Obviously, all of them have essentially, and then they find a new home with the Straw Hats and everything like that, right? But with Brook, it's not quite the same because just the simple fact that he's a skeleton now, right? Like he's it feels like he's already lived his true life once, and it feels like his true life already ended in tragedy, and now he's this like he still lives on, right? But he's clearly not going to have the same sort of life and experiences as a skeleton. And he's kind of gone a little bit bonkers and everything like that too in the process, right? It's just, it feels like this is the we're living with the shadow of who Brook once was. Um, it's just really very sad. Like, it's bittersweet. Like, it is great to see Brook very happy and everything like that with the Straw Hats. But I can't help but feel that his his more powerful relationships and connections were with the people he lost before. You know what I mean? Like with Robin, she obviously it was very tragic what happened with her and Saul and everything, but it feels like she's found a new home that's just as meaningful, if not more so, with the Straw Hats, right? Like Nami lost Bellemere, but with the Straw Hats, she's found a new home just as meaningful, etc. Like Chopper, all of these crew members. With Brook, I think between seeing these last two backstories, it really feels like his true life was a tragedy. And this is a second life, but it's not quite the same. I don't think that I think that his real story already happened. And this is kind of like a bonus additional section. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like his bonds with the Straw Hats are simply not gonna ever be at like they're not gonna actually be able to make up for what he had with the Rumbar Pirates or what he had with the royal family of Vesperia. It's just not the same. It's really really interesting. Um, that's not to say his bonds with the Strats aren't really beautiful and meaningful, but he is often treated as kind of like this gag side goofy character of the crew, often like in the background, and in reality it's like no, this man has so much depth and substance behind the goofy surface. There's like so much there. Brook is just he's rocketed up my Straw Hat rankings with this chapter. Like this is really good writing. This is really really good writing. Excited to see what happens next. Uh, yeah, I'm very moved by Brook now. Very very moved by Brook. Brook is literally living again for Luffy. It's beautiful how happy he is to have friends. Yeah, it's just that it feels like this is like a it's not the same. Like I think with all of the Straw Hats, it's like they lost something, but they were able to find something as meaningful, if not better, in the crew. With Brook, I don't think it's ever going to be quite the same. I think it's different. I think it's different. Brook definitely got the worst life of any of the Strats. I used to kind of push against it. I would argue that Robin has. I think in the grand scheme of things, I think it's silly to compare who had the worst life between all of them or whatever, but I think in the grand scheme of things, just the length of time that Brooks up, like his whole life was tragic, right? This is a bonus life, right? So he has lived a complete life. And the crazy thing is he's lost everything twice. Three times, I suppose, because we don't know about his first little family, right? Like father, mother, brother, right? Three times he's lost everything. It is actually insane. And like now he's literally only living on so that he can have a reunion with this whale who's the only person from his first life. I guess Shuri now. So Shuri, there is something beautiful to that he still is going to get to reconnect with her and everything. So that is really powerful. Obviously, Brook and the Strats, that means a lot to him and everything. But a lot of it is also he's repaying his debt to Luffy. I just don't think that his bond with the Strats is ever going to be as deep as it is with the, like, we've seen him with the Rumbar Pirates. We've seen him with the, with the Asperia family and everything like that. Like, that was his true life. He spent so much more time with them. It's just not the same. Like, it is really cool that he's getting this. It feels, I'm just always going to feel sadder from here on for Brook than the rest of the crew, because with the rest of the crew, I truly feel like Robin has for Robin, joining the Strats has like healed that hole in her heart and fixed that. Nami, same thing. Like, I feel like for all the Strats, them joining the crew has put that piece that was missing their hearts back into place. With Brook, it's a faint recreation of what he once had. It's not the same. I just don't think it's the same. It's crazy. Imagine how Sabaody must have felt. Finally found a new family just for it to be seemingly destroyed for the fourth time. It's so Brook is just an awesome character. I don't the whole concept I appreciate so much more now of the character. I just appreciate the whole concept more. I don't think I've seen another character quite like Brook in another story. Like Oda writing this silly musical gentleman skeleton figure or whatever, right? Also, we got this chapter, the explanation of why Brook tries to put on airs as a gentleman, right? That's kind of what he's introduced as initially, like, this fancy gentleman walking around with a cane and a top hat and fluffing his bow tie and everything, but he's still like just a a dumbass pervert underneath that. He just picked up this image because he thought that that's what Candle would like. Yeah, but it's, I don't know. Yeah, just the concept of him as this man who's lived and lost everything over and over again, and now he's literally nothing but bones, right? Like, he's just a skeleton. He's a skeleton of his former self, but he still like, despite all the pain and suffering he's been through, he still carries so much joy and appreciation for life in his heart. And it's symbolized by him being a musician and using music to carry that. There's so much I think there's a Brook. I fucked up, by the way. This next Tuesday, after fully reading the chapter, I was like, this next Tuesday, I want to do a Brook video. But the problem is, time-wise, I had seen spoilers and everything like that, and I was like, I didn't fully grasp how emotional this chapter would be, reading the brief spoilers, so I was like, okay, let me do a Brook analysis when this is all over and everything. But now, having read the full chapter, I'm like, oh my god, I want to do a Brook video right now. But I've already scripted and it's too late. I kind of considered doing a pivot partway through the day, but it would just delay the video too much. So I already have a video for next Tuesday that's not Brook focused. It's actually Usopp focused. But yeah, I want to go back and maybe we got a break week, right? So like maybe I want to do Brook the week after that. Brook has gone up my Straw Hat rankings significantly with this chapter. Like, because now it's just making me sit back and really think about the full breadth of who this character is. he might be the best written Straw Hat. Brook might be the best written Straw Hat. Maybe I think that there's the most layers to break down for this character out of the Straw Hats. I think all the Straw Hats, especially the East Blue Five, are really, really well written in their own way. And they're all very compelling in their own way. But in terms of like in terms of complexity and depth to the character, I think Brook might be number one. And I would never have said that actually before this backstory. I think this backstory made me just reflect on the character some more too. I mean, you can make an argument for lots of characters. I'll always say that I think that Robin has the best written character arc out of the Straw Hats. Like, literally from straight up suicidal, like, the past, suicidal, etc. I want to die, through I want to live. I think it's just the most emotionally powerful single character story arc of any of the Straw. And frankly, it's my favorite character arc of any fictional character, Robin's storyline in any Slobby. Maybe it's just, the time that I first experienced it as a kid and everything, but it will always deeply, deeply, deeply move me. I just love that character arc so much. But best character arc versus most complex character, I would give Brook. Like, there's just so many more layers. Like, the man's lived 4 lives, essentially. Like, he died, like, his whole world died once. His whole world was erased once as a child, then once as an adult, and then once again at the end of his, like, actual life, once again, essentially as a middle-aged man. And then finally now he's living out this this sort of fantasy, like, bittersweet final go around to sort of, like, I don't know, like, exorcise some demons of his past, like, cling on to the one thing he has left with Laboon, fulfill somebody else's debt, fulfill another final debt. Like, it's just there's so much to it, but everything that Brook does right now, it can't really fix or heal all of the things that happened in the past. Although, obviously, taking down the world government now becomes a lot more compelling, I imagine. We just never knew that. Deptio Trevisa, thanks for the 2. So glad Brook's panties gag doesn't have an origin. Yeah, not everything needs an origin. Not everything needs an origin. I think it's interesting that we never learned why Brook wants to be a pirate, but I guess he just wants to be a pirate. One Piece, One Life, thanks for the 5. Yo, Morge just made a video about the arc child role that I think fits well with your dynamics of every arc vid. Not saying to watch it, but have you thought about it? About the arc child role. The arc child role. What does that mean? Are you saying, like, lots of arcs have, like... Because I've thought about this a little bit, right? Like, Wano has Momonosuke and Tama, right? But then, if you just go through, right? Like, Punk Hazard had Mocha, Egghead Island had Bonnie. You could argue that Elbaf has Colin, right? I think Oda lots of times likes to write that. Let me. You want to drop? What's your channel? We can take a quick peek at it. Sid P, thanks for the 2. Gunko's dad, Celestial Dragon, confirmed. So I didn't even realize this till I saw people commenting. I already did my chapter review and everything. So a Celestial Dragon was allowed to come. Like, a lot of people are saying that, Candle got pregnant with a Celestial Dragon's child. Isn't that, like, Celestial Dragon was allowed to come and just... What the fuck? Like, what the hell happened? Why was Leuven okay with that? Like, what's going on? These breaks are killing me, says Kurokami Najimi. Yeah, but man, this was a good-ass chapter. This was a classic One Piece chapter. Tio, thanks to 2. You think Candle died in the same way as Ginny? Ooh, that would be really interesting. If these Celestial Dragons are just walking STD pieces of shit, which would make sense. Damn. Justin, thanks for the 5. Maybe it wouldn't be the same for Brook, but thanks to them, there's a chance to salvage some of what he lost, like they all have, and be stronger. Yeah, I think for Brook, it's just never quite going to be the same. And I think there's something to be said about, like, all of the other Straw Hats have had their traumatic experiences happen in childhood. And obviously that's, the worst time to have traumatic experiences, right? Like, that's obviously a deep, deep sense of loss that's never going to go away, right? But ultimately, they have those losses in their childhood, but that's something that doesn't have to define their adulthood. Like, they're able to build, like, your childhood isn't your life, right? They're ultimately able to go on upon meeting the Straw Hats and start this, like, and reroute the trajectory of their lives to become something much more positive, right? Like, obviously, it is absolutely terrible that what happened with Nami and Velamir, and then the, I think, 10 years that she had to go fending for herself and living this very difficult life. But ever since she met the Straw Hats, now, like, that really was just the very first phase of her life. The rest of her life is going to be amazing from here on out, right? Same applies to all of the Straw Hats, right? They're all being caught by the rest of the members of the crew at a point where it's not too late. They can still have a phenomenal, fantastic life from here on, right? It's saving them from the negative trajectory that they're on, right? Jinbei, you can say whatever, but I think Jinbei's life was mostly fine before he joined the Straw Hat crew. Got a lot to say about Jinbei. Brook is so different in that he's had this cycle happen to him over and over and over again, and his life ended, right? That is so crazy. And, like, whatever he's having right now with the Straw Hats, it is sweet, but it's just not the same. He's not like a spring chicken who can now reset the trajectory of his life um and still have still have a happy life from adulthood onwards or anything, right? Like, he has completed that journey. He's basically just on, like, now a sort of house money sort of situation. It's like, all right, we'll let you back in the door and you can check some things off, but it's not going to be the same as when you were alive. Like, you've already done that part. Like, that chapter is essentially over. You're just getting a bonus chapter to kind of make some amends and heal some things, right? That's so, it's crazy. I'm just looking at Brook so differently now the more that I think about him. Justin, thanks for the 5. Maybe it won't be the same for... Oh, no, we covered this. Sorry. JP, thanks for the 5. Said it before, but the sheer amount of Gunko outfits and designs confirms to me that this is one of Oda's favorite characters. Yeah, I think that... I don't know. I think that there's crew possibility here. Tom says it's a second life. Yeah, but the catch being that he had to kind of go a little bit insane first and then literally become a skeleton and is just bones is symbolic of the fact that it's not the same as his original life. Like, it's not like he just got round 2. It's a more hollow version of what he once had. Everyone he once knew and grew up with, etc., is dead and gone. He himself is essentially represents a man who's already essentially passed on into the other world. Like, visual design wise, everything about him, he is dead, basically. But it's crazy. Oh my god, I wonder if Oda's gonna kill him. I don't know. No, Oda can't kill Brook because he has to meet with Laboon again. Brook is on New Game Plus. Yeah, but New Game Plus, but in a way that it's emotionally and, like, in terms of experiences, it's not ever going to be the same. It fundamentally can't, you know? Yeah, this quote, tetrahedral milk, thanks for the 5. Oh, Avery Sir, first of all, thanks for being Yonko tier member for 20 months. But yeah, Brook being on New Game Plus. Tetrahedral milk, yeah, this quote is what I thought of. Thanks for the 5. Brook saying that he was so grateful to have lived at the end of Thriller Bark hits so different after this chapter. Yeah. The man has gone through so much. This is so good. Like, this is so fucking good. Like, the portrait of who this character is has just become so much more nuanced. Newt Worgan, thanks for the 5. Elbaf seems to have a lot of post-story setup for the Straw Hats. Brook will have Shuri and Robin has Saul. One is obviously much better written, but still. Yeah, Brook and Shuri's reunion is so on a totally different level than Robin and Saul. I mean, originally Brook was just gonna have Laboon, but, I don't know, maybe Laboon and Shuri or something like that. Who knows? I do really wonder. Are we gonna get... Yeah, I really wonder. You think we could get Gunko as a Straw Hat? Sorry, Shuri. I should call her Shuri. Oh, this is Brim? I remember you, Brim. Alright, you changed your name. Alright. Let's do a quick poll. will Shuri join as a Straw Hat? Oh, hey, Casey. Good girl. Yep. Okay. Okay, okay. Oh my god. Okay. Fuck. Casey, what's going on? Our dog has stitches right now. Some of them got a little pulled, it sounds like. So, fuck. She's bleeding a little, apparently. Shouldn't be bad. We just got it checked actually at the oncologist literally yesterday, so they're healing up fine, but we'll take a look at this after. Casey, lay down. Casey, you gotta lay down. You gotta lay down. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I might have to go grab her water and a bed. Okay, most people are leaning towards no Shuri for Straw Hat. JP, thanks for the 5. Reuven's death is for Brook. What it would be for if Luffy died for the Straw Hats. Yeah, but it's just like Reuven and Candle, and then again with Yorkie. Like, how many times is Brook gonna go through this shit? It's just insane. Also, let's get stream likes up to 50 real quick. To Tio Treviso, for Brook, the Reuven death would be like if Luffy died and then Brook walked in and thought he saw Nami doing it, or like Usopp or Chopper doing it, or something like that. That would break his brain. Tio Treviso thanks for the 2. Celestial dragons are so nasty. Their STDs have STDs. Biological weapon. Yeah, it's not right. Rumble Weeb 50, thanks a lot. Morge, it's been 8 years since I've started One Piece, and you have been a huge part in this journey. I have been for years now, so thanks, man. Also Brago collab. I've collabed with Brago on occasions in the past. We haven't done anything lately. I've generally stayed away from doing collabs as much. Archer was just an exception just because something came up, basically. Like, he was reaching out, or he was asking about the, like, he brought up in the first place, would I like to debut the map, or, like, show the map on stream? And then people on stream were saying, like, hey, more check out Archer's map. And I was like, okay, well, Archer did reach out about this, so you guys probably enjoy that. But yeah, also, if you guys want to support Brago, right now he's doing promotions for One Dream. So if you buy the island posters and use Brago's deal for it, then basically the payout goes to Brago. So if you guys want to support Brago's channel or whatever, he's got a deal running right now for the island posters. And here, I'll just drop it for you guys. He's got a deal running right now for the island posters. Let me see if I can find the link. Where is it? Where's this link? I don't know. Just go here. Hold on. Yeah, just go here and use promo code BDA Law. Use the promo code BDA Law. One Piece, One Life, thanks for the 2. Name is tied to this account. Shouted you out in it. Alright, let's check this out. Alright, let's see. One Piece, One Life. Hold on. Hold on. Might have to get my dog some water real quick. One Piece, One Life. Oh, dude, you're at 3,000 subscribers? Damn, nice. The Arc Child, One Piece's emotional core. Oh, cool. Here, I'll drop a link to you too so people can check out. I'll drop a link to this video.
Guys, the kid of the Arc. There are a lot of tropes.
I think that's a good topic that you're tackling there. Unity is strength 1, thanks to the 5. What island or kingdom do you think could win a World Cup in One Piece? I think Elbaf or Wano. BTWDC, I Show Speed's World Cup song champions. I am not, unfortunately, into football, right? As it's called. I was going to call it soccer, but people get upset. Although, for the record, it was originally called soccer. Not originally called soccer, but the British who basically popularized the sport, they called it soccer in the first place, right? So they created the game, then it became known as soccer among them, all right, because it was association football, it became soccer, right? So they called it that themselves, spread the sport throughout the rest of the world, and then they stopped calling it that themselves, and then they're like, look at these dumb Americans calling it soccer. It's like, we didn't just come up with the word soccer. You guys called it soccer. You changed your mind later. That doesn't make us dumb. We don't even know, like, I don't even know what a soccer is. Like, growing up, I was like, soccer, what does the word mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's because the fucking Europe came up with that in the first place. And then they passed it on to us, and then they're like, why are you guys calling it soccer? Why do you call it soccer? It's football. It's like, you fucking idiots called it soccer. We don't care. We don't play this game. We called it what you told us to call it. All right? Anyway, I don't care that much about football. I've heard amazing things about, like, I've heard so many, I have friends who are really big into it, and they kind of painted the picture of why there's no sport in the world like football in terms of just, like, fandom, the excitement of watching games and stuff. And it does make me want to get into it. Like, it does sound really exciting, and the sort of pride and energy that goes into it. And I like a lot of the ideas about how anyone can kind of work their way up the levels of leagues to theoretically become a pro player themselves. But I'm not into it myself. And then I definitely am not into I Show Speed. I'm definitely not. I don't watch Speed. So to me, in general, I'm probably not going to watch. Maybe I'll watch the World Cup Song Champions. I just don't know what the deal is with that. So I'm not really interested. As for who would win the World Cup in One Piece, Elbaf or Wano, I think Elbaf would win, right? Elbaf, like, it's, how do you even, like, the average team is made up of giants. It's basically a kind of a done deal, right? Unless, I guess the argument is that with the Giants, the Giants are so big, they wouldn't be able to handle the ball with finesse, right? So I think ultimately, I guess Wano would probably win. You got the most, you kind of just go with, like, who's the next tier of strongest characters, which is basically Wano has the next amount of strong characters, I would say. And, yeah, that's going to be the best, that'll field the best team, I would say. Sid B, thanks for 5. Do you remember the old One Piece YouTubers, One Piece Theory YouTubers, Alpha Too Late, One World HD, Hawkeye Anime Fan Talk? Also, would you do a collab with One World HD? So these are all YouTubers who I learned about much later in my own YouTube career, like the era prior, if that makes sense. I gotta get Casey some water. Sorry, just give me a second, guys. I gotta get Casey some water. She's panting. All right, hold on, Casey. Wait. Okay, Casey. Yeah. You just stay here. Wait, Casey. Wait. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay. Hold on. Good girl. Okay, wait. It's water. Yeah, here. Okay, so how about you have this? Yeah, there's water for you. And then hold on. Okay, Casey, come here. Yeah, lay down. Good girl. Yeah, lay down. Yeah, sorry about that. So that era of YouTubers was before. Okay, so here's my understanding of One Piece YouTube eras. One Piece YouTube eras. I viewed the Alpha Too Late, One World HD, Hawkeye Anime Fan Talk. Those are people like I'm aware of the names, and I think I probably did see their channel at some point, like just out of curiosity, because like people would talk about them. When I got into One Piece YouTube, I knew nothing about One Piece YouTube. Absolutely nothing. The only thing I did was like, because I just knew the type of stuff I wanted to make, which was like analysis videos on One Piece. And I had kind of just did a little bit of searching and was like, okay, this stuff doesn't really exist. Super Eye Patch Wolf had like one analysis video on One Piece, and then there was the YouTuber Craftsdwarf who had like a couple analysis videos on One Piece, and then that was basically it. There wasn't really analytical video essay content on One Piece, period, before I started. So that was all I really wanted to check, and then I started doing my own thing. Then there was only one anime YouTuber who I even knew of in existence. I guess outside of like Super Eye Patch Wolf when I researched him and stuff, okay? Like before I even got into One Piece YouTube, the only person whose videos I had seen was King of Lightning, and it was literally only because there was like it wasn't even a One Piece thing. There was a fairy tale chapter that came out that was so bad that King of Lightning basically quit Fairy Tail, and then that video got like shared around. So that was years ago. So I was like, oh, there's like YouTubers for anime and manga. That was like a foreign thought to me. Okay, so I never watched King of Lightning's videos, but I knew that like I knew the name King of Lightning just because he was the first and only anime YouTuber that I'd ever seen. Then because of that one fairy tale moment, and that was my only context. Okay, so that was it. All right, then progressed to like me being like, what if I did One Piece YouTube content? And so I did a quick search of just like what exists. I saw Super Eye Patch Wolf, I saw Craftsdwarf in terms of analytical stuff, and I was like, okay, they're not really dedicated to doing One Piece content though long term. So I was like, okay, open season for me. So then I started doing my videos. Then as I started getting into the YouTube scene, slowly then I started to become aware of like other One Piece YouTubers. Because before my mentality was like, oh, if they're not doing like analysis stuff, then I don't really care. Casey, go drink water. Go drink water. Yeah. Go drink water. It's okay. Go. Yeah, Casey, go. It's right there. Oh, okay. Casey, you gotta go lay down. Okay. She doesn't want to lay down. All right. Anyway, yeah. So then I started to find out that other One Piece YouTubers existed. So that's when I found out, like, okay, Tekking, Rogers Base, Brago. So it was only after I started that I learned about the broader scene, and then I slowly learned that there was like previous One Piece YouTubers, and apparently there was lots of drama that happened. Like there was like YouTube wars that happened where like One Piece YouTubers had beef with like for Neverworld and stuff like that, had beef with this guy and that guy. So I thought that was like, okay, I was like, that's wacky. Didn't know about that. And then I think, yeah, then I think I was coming up. O'Hara was one of my contemporaries. I think Grand Line was also a contemporary. Brago rebranded into BDA Law around the same time that I was kind of growing, so you could consider that. No, I wouldn't consider Brago contemporary. And then I think after I had kind of become established, that then like there was another batch of YouTubers that I would view as like, I don't know, the timeline's fuzzy in my head now. Like, you know, like JD Legend, Parvision, Hidden Island, Randy Troy. I don't know if I'm mixing up like what, maybe they're not all in this. This all happens over the course of years, so I wouldn't say it's all at the same time. And then I think finally now I have slowed down on doing collaborations and stuff so much, and I only show up for reveries for like a brief period of time. So now I'm kind of just like super unfamiliar with the overall One Piece YouTube scene, like in terms of like who's new, stuff like that, you know? Like I remember the last reverie that I joined, I was just like, who the fuck are all these people? Not in like a like fuck you guys sort of way, but it was just like, oh my god, like sometimes you look around and everything's changed, and it was like, damn, like I I didn't realize that the One Piece One Piece community, whatever you want to call it, One Piece YouTube scene had blown up so much that now I just didn't recognize like half the people that were in this reverie. I was like, damn, you know. Raul, thanks for the 2. Left part of the new Holy Knight's face was covered. Yeah, I'm curious if that's the man marked by flames. I'm very curious if that's the man marked by flames. Man, I miss Hidden Island. I miss Hidden Island too. I thought he had great theories, like awesome theories. In the biggest theory video that I've ever done, which was about the mural, there's a solid like section of that where I reference one of Hidden Island's videos, which is my favorite One Piece theory on YouTube, which was about, it was like the greatest emu theory ever, or he retitled it, so that might, I don't know if that's still the title or whatever. But it was talking about how like the dream, like the energy that Vegapunk talks about, the infinite energy, maybe dreams, and so like that was a really cool idea. So I referenced that in the mural because I think that connects a lot of the dots there. But props to Hidden Island. He left YouTube because he wanted to focus on his own creative stuff, and I think that that's ultimately the right thing to do if you're very dedicated to that, because YouTube is very time consuming. So you can't really focus on your own creative stuff if you're full-time YouTube, you know? Rumbleweed, thanks for the 40, from whatever currency. Thanks for the donation. Shuri will join. It subverts expectations for Loki. It subverts expectations for Loki. I just think that Loki joining is not even like, I mean, do people think Loki's gonna join? Hydrogen 4524 sent gold coin for 10 joules. I don't know what that is, but cool. Ajay, thanks to the 2. Candle's unnamed crush is odd, but she's dead now. I thought her unnamed crush was Luvin. You know? So that was the idea. The crush was the king. Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean the king is Shuri's father. We don't know. Who are you people, Patrick Star Wars? Yeah, the crush was the king. Yeah, with Loki, I don't think people really believe, like, Loki joining was always, I think Loki joining only had some sort of merit to it back when, I might have to take Casey out. She's too hyper. She doesn't want to lie down. Yeah, that only had some merit to it, I would say, when, before we kind of realized how strong Loki is. I think at this point it's really hard to imagine someone like, put it like, Loki is right now, while injured and handicapped, going toe to toe with the final boss of the story. Maybe Blackbeard will be the final boss. I still think it'll be Blackbeard, but you know, like, let's say the strongest character in the world at the very least. Okay. Yeah. The strongest character in the world going toe to toe with, hold on. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, what was I saying? Yeah, like, Loki is already fighting basically toe to toe with the strongest character in the world. Probably the strongest character in the entirety of the third world so far, right? Like, how do you just have him on the crew? I don't know. Also, let's get the stream likes up to 50 real quick. Let's get the stream likes up to 50. And Elite, thanks to the 5. Brook properly represents his devil fruit. Even if he dies, he keeps on going. That's a great point. Yeah. He's already lived several lives, right? This is essentially his 4th go around, you know? JP, thanks for the 2. If Candle was Secret Holy Knight, her crush was Emu. That would be crazy, but I don't know if that's actually the case. I don't know. We gotta wait and see. I do think there's a solid possibility that the Holy Knight we saw is the man marked by flames. Sheldon says, hey, how's it going, Morge? Awesome vids, man. Good. Things are going good. Life's been super busy lately, but lots of good developments. I'm ready to crash after this stream. Well, I still got a few more things to do, but I'm ready to crash. I really like being able to close out the week, like Fridays, with streams. Monday streams, so it's tricky because Monday streams are kind of like a kickstart for me because you know how Mondays, like, it's the start of the work week, so you can feel like a little bit sluggish and everything like that. But when you're streaming, then, you know, you're basically, on for, hundreds of people for a couple hours, right? So it's a good way to kick me into, not that streaming's like the hardest thing or anything like that, but it's a good way to kind of like activate and be like, okay, like it's time for, like even if the Monday so far has been kind of slow and sluggish, now it's stream time, so now you kind of get going. So it's a good way to start the week. And then Friday, it's a nice laid back way to end the week, if that makes sense. More, did you miss my super about Candle's death? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, Tia. 1 second. Tia, thanks for the 2. I think Candle faked her death. She's a Manmayer. I think that's possible, but I'm also on board with the theory that she was impregnated by a celestial dragon. I saw people talking about that afterwards. I'm on board with that theory because that celestial dragon may have been a Manmare. And I think the fact that Shuri has like 2, very different colored eyes is interesting. Like it could be hinting at Shuri being part, like half and half, half celestial dragon, half not. Hold on. Let me read this again. Am I tracking the timeline properly? Yeah. Celebrations, blah blah blah. Yeah, I really think that she got impregnated. And the eyes are basically like a hint at that. So I think the father, whoever the real father is probably Manmare. Bane, thanks for the 5. Bane566, thanks for the 5. Hot take, this is Oda's worst flashback. Bad placement, weak characters. Felt nothing during deaths. Dami Reversi makes no sense since killing should revive the king. So for me, this is an instance where, what do you call? Dami Reversi make... That's actually a good point, right? When you... Characters Dami Reversi'd and then... Is that how that works? No, right? Like, that's not how Dami Reversi... I think with Dami Reversi, characters that the Dami Reversi character kills just die, but it's if you get between or adjacent to Dami Reversi characters, then you get converted. Am I forgetting? I think that's the case, right? So let me address some of this. Bad placement. I think placement can be better evaluated once we get back into the flow of the story. Because then we could, like, if we cut back to the story and then we're like, damn, like that flashback really added a lot of emotional weight and juice to the modern day conflict, like, and it helps bring a lot more context and drama to the current day, then we might feel something different, because again, I would say that the other flashback in Elbaf I thought was initially poorly timed. I was just kind of like, okay, well, Oda's got to get Loki's stuff out of the way, so let's hear him get this stuff out of the way, you know? Because we were all really excited to see everybody go upstairs and fight Emu and the Holy Knights, right? But then it was like, whoa, hold on. We got to hear about what happened with Loki and Harold on that day 14 years ago. So it was like, all right, let's like, okay, to get it out of the way. But then by the end of the flashback, it was like, holy shit, that was the perfect place to put it. It, like, giving us that flashback, one, was a phenomenal flashback, and two, it gave us so much more context and dramatic weight heading back into the modern day conflict. So, like, in retrospect, that was a perfectly placed flashback, right? So I think it's hard to evaluate flashback placement till it's over, personally. Weak characters, I would somewhat agree. I would agree. But I think that this is not going to be... I don't think Candle... Unless Candle comes back from the dead and is revealed to be like some double agent or anything like that, I don't think Candle or Leuven is going down as some, like, all-time great One Piece flashback character. Like, if I were to... I think that Leuven will be forgettable and Candle will be forgettable in the grand scheme of things. Shuri is obviously here to stay, so her story's going to keep going, and, we will likely grow more attached to her as time goes on, and we get to see more of her path and her suffering and what she went through and her modern day, I assume, like, not redemption, she doesn't need to redeem herself, but her modern day, like, return back to her normal self, all of that, right? For me, I'm enjoying the flashback a lot because of Brook. Last chapter, I told you I thought it felt kind of generic and by the numbers. This chapter, I thought was done I felt like it was done creatively. And I think especially the ending sequence. The ending sequence was very well done. The use of music to kind of build that sort of sense of tension to the final moment where Brook gets this shocking scene. Even though we knew the scene was coming, I think Oda did an effective job between these two chapters of getting us into Brook's shoes and kind of feeling his level of attachment to this royal family, and making us feel that sort of shock when he finds the scene that he does find, And for me, it's hard to explain, but this flashback, I think on its own, right? So, like, let's erase everything else we know about Brook's character. On its own, I think it's a solid flashback, right? First chapter I thought was generic. This chapter I thought was stronger. But to me, it's kind of more than the sum of its parts. That's probably why I'm enjoying the flashback. It's after reading this chapter and now I feel like I really understand Brook so much better because I can place it in context with what we saw of his next flashback, and then of everything he's been like, what he's gone through, and how he kind of is today with the Straw Hats. It just feels like he's still alive, obviously, in a sense, and he's still got joy in his heart and everything, but he's also kind of a different he's gone off his rocker now. He's kind of kooky and crazy in a way that he wasn't before. He's a literal skeleton. He's hollowed out. And it's just letting the whole, the totality of it all kind of come together, of, like, just realizing how much he's, like, lived and lost over and over again till finally he lost his own life. And now he's getting, like, this final bonus lease on it. There's just something, I think, something inherently sad about Brook's entire journey that can never be fixed. And I think that's one of the things, like, that separates it for me from a lot of the other Straw Hat stories. And that, I was saying this earlier in the stream, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's just like, it kind of feels like, yeah, all of the Straw Hats, they're not going to lose what they once had, or they're not going to get back what they once had or whatever, but they all lost what they lost when they were children, and joining the Straw Hats essentially, like, gave them something even better, in a sense, and it kind of, or at least as good, and allowed them to heal and fix the trajectory of their life, right? Brook is the only character that I'm now realizing, like, no, he just lived his full life. He experienced tragedy after tragedy, loss after loss. He's, like, that ship has essentially sailed, right? This is what he's getting right now with the Straw Hats, as, just reduced to this talking skeleton, lost a lot of his, his personality has kind of become something, like, a lot kookier, going crazy all those years on the ship and everything like that. He can kind of get this sort of second lease on life as a consolation prize. But the sad part is that for him, again, the ship has sailed. It's never going to be the same, right? Like, what he lost over and over and over, the Straw Hats can never kind of mend that and put him on like a better trajectory and everything like that, because he's kind of past that point. It's kind of just like Oda giving him a sort of bittersweet sort of final sort of go around that has a happy ending in a way that the other three lives that he lived didn't. But it can't have the same meaning exactly because he is so far fallen from the true life that he once had. Does that make sense? Uh, I think that's really what's being hammered in for the flashback for me. It's not just this chapter in isolation, or even this piece of Brook's past in isolation. It's just the overall context and understanding now of like I'm seeing him through a different lens, seeing him as a child, seeing him as a young adult, and then connecting him to like the happy-go-lucky figure that we saw in the Rumbar Pirates. In reality, he wasn't happy-go-lucky then either. That's the crazy thing. Like, he had already lived and experienced like so much darkness and tragedy, right? Like the Rumbar Pirates, he essentially went through kind of like the Straw Hats grow up, they experience loss and everything in their younger years, and then they get a new family, a newfound family that sort of replaces that for them, right? But Brook lost his family, got his newfound family with the Speria royal family, lost them, and now we're getting the context that basically the Rumbar Pirates, they were essentially for him like the saving grace of like another family finally, like finally another found family that he can fall back, like that can fill kind of that hole in his heart. But he lost them as well. Does that make sense? It would be kind of like if we got the story of Robin losing everything, and then she meets the Straw Hats who are finally a new home for her that can heal that, and then she just loses the Straw Hats as well. And then she has to live in isolation for another 50 years or whatever, till her whole body decays and she loses her mind and she becomes just a skeleton, right? Like, and the only person that she can go back to is a whale, you know? It's just the whole context of Brook's story is just so much more tragic now. I think that's why I'm really enjoying it. It makes me feel like I just haven't seen a character written with that sort of story in mind like what Oda had for Brook. It's just, the thing is that Brook just gives off so much positive energy and joy, like hiding so much pain, like a lifetime worth of like loss and then loss and then loss, that it's easy to forget. Like it's easy to look, it's easy to not fully soak in what he actually is, but now this is really making it sink in, you know? I think just the added knowledge that the Rumbar Pirates, like losing the Rumbar Pirates was not the only deep tragedy that he experienced in his life. It was rather just like the final great blow of like a cycle of tragedies that he'd been experiencing over and over. It just changes so much to me about his character and makes me like look at who he is today with like, he's just so much more, like he's so inspirational now. I just love the concept of Brook because Brook's story is one that will always be somewhat sad. It can never, like, it will never have a truly happy ending the way that the rest of the Straw Hats can still have. I think Brook is the character who can never truly have that. You know? I think he's lost that, essentially. And that's the cool thing about Brook, which is that he's okay with not having a happy ending. He's able to kind of, like, instill joy into himself despite it all and tell him like he says, like, I've had a wonderful life, like what a wonderful life and everything like that, despite everything that he's gone through. It hasn't been a wonderful life, but the outlook, and obviously like that's why he embodies music, the musician of the crew. I think it all just becomes so much more beautiful realizing like he really did not have a wonderful life. Like it wasn't just losing the Rumbar Pirates, right? That was the cherry on top of so many other terrible losses, you know? But if you don't enjoy the flashback, I'm not going to try and convince you that it's really good or that you should feel something. I'm just saying like what I'm taking away from it. I agree with the critiques of bad placement. I think that's pending. I think let's wait and see. But so far, I'm actually now I'm actually cool with where it's being placed. I think it's good for context. And then weak characters, I would agree that compared to other flashback characters, Leuven and Candle a little bit too quick, you know, not too much time spent with them, and not too much that's unique about them. But for me, this flashback really is more so about just understanding Brook better, and I think Shuri as well will feel more for her as it goes on. Bane556, oh wait, sorry, Rumbleweeb, 50, thanks. Luffy asked Loki to join, but Loki after this arc loves Elbaf more, and Gunko redeems herself and joins the Stride, because she can't be an Elbaf now. I think that there's a solid possibility. I think right now, the thing is that we might ultimately end up with Gunko basically going kind of how do I say? Gunko going kind of the Bonnie route, where it seems like she's set to join and everything, but maybe she just, you know, it's better if she gets to live a happily ever after on her own or something. But Brook, I feel like Gunko might have to join the Strides, because now that I think about it, like, we had Bonnie, right? We just had this arc with Bonnie, and with Bonnie, it was like, okay, well, now she needs a home, right? Now that she's kind of been saved, right? She needs a home. And so she gets to live with her dad, right? She gets to live with Kuma. Okay? But then, so that makes sense, right? She gets to live with Kuma. What happens with Shuri, right? To me, it's like either Shuri dies here, or she's gonna need someplace to be after all this, right? And Brook is the only, like, she's lived 70-something years. Brook is the only connection that exists for her. And she's lucky that Brook, like, I think it's very sweet, actually, that she's lucky that Brook somehow managed to survive this long as well. I don't know. I feel like there's a solid chance that she at least sails on board the ship. Bane556 thanks for 2. Also, Gunko isn't exciting enough to learn in bits. I think that we need more. I think we need more out of the character, I think, to distinguish herself, you know? Like, I don't think she's remarkably different than a lot of the other princess-type figures that we've gotten so far. It's tricky because, like, oh my god, like, just thinking of some of the dialogue that Gunko has now in retrospect, like, this world was supposed to just disappear one day, you know, like, quietly disappear, but instead we're gonna have a big war, right? Gunko listening to Brook's music is so crazy to think about now. Like, listening to the new, like, putting on the headphones and listening to New World. There's just so much cool shit to think about now, in retrospect. But I agree that Gunko herself, personality-wise, we probably need somewhat more. Because essentially, in terms of, like, writing focus, Shuri so far has had about half a chapter at best of us getting to see her character. And it was done mostly through montage, which makes it even harder to really, like, feel like this is a really unique character to get attached to. But I think we're just getting started with her, you know? Like, now we're probably going to get a little bit more with the flashback with her. And then when she reawakens in the modern day, then we get to see Shuri, that personality resurface. So I think it's early days, you know? JP, thanks to 5. Brook's repeated tragedies is reminiscent of Kuma's repeated tragic life cycle. Yeah, I feel like there's so much similarity right now between, like, Oda writing Kuma and Bonnie, and then Oda also writing Brook and Shuri. And both of these characters really were established for us in Thriller Bark. Obviously, Kuma technically showed up earlier than Thriller Bark, but Thriller Bark was the arc that we really got to see Kuma as a character up front and center. And that's also when Brook was introduced. So I feel like Oda's been thinking about that stuff for some time. Julian Reed, thanks for the 5. People are saying Candle was potentially sexually assaulted by that Celestial Dragon, which is why she was bedridden for a couple months. She was pregnant from the assault, like Ginny. Yeah, I think that there is a solid possibility that that's the case. I think there's a very solid possibility. For all we know, that God's Knight that we see, he might be Shuri's father, whoever that dude is right there, you know, for all we know. I believe that theory. That's not what I thought when I read the chapter, but it's a good theory that I'm seeing people talk about. Taptir Treviso, thanks for the 2. Shuri was already 15 when Candle died and the fog. Yeah. Wait, what's the... Is that clarifying something? Did I say something otherwise? Julian Reed 6030, thanks for the 5. Brooke said it seems like she can see the future when she's fighting sometimes. Is she an advanced observation prodigy? Could have something to do with her eyes. Yeah, I think that she is. I think that's hinting that she's a future sight user. I'm gonna wait for the Viz translation for clarification on that. But it does seem like that's a future sight hint. I think it plays into her Devil Fruit ability as well, which is like it's tracing the future essentially. So it works well if you're a future sight user yourself. Kyle0426, thanks for the 5. Do you think Imu will revoke the contract, effectively killing Gunko when she betrays him? Oh. Oh. Yeah, maybe. I wonder if it's possible that he can only do it to Gorosei level character, like deep sea characters. I don't know. That's very interesting. I think that's possible. Yeah, I think that's very possible. I don't know. I don't know if Oda would kill Gunko like that though. That'd be so dark. Like her life is just the most fucked life in One Piece if her story ends in Elbaf like that. I feel like Oda's heading for like a happy ending for Shuri, right? I think he's a Manmare. Yeah. Dear Treviso, thanks for the 2. The Celestial Dragon came to the island when Shuri was age 14. Oh, am I confused? Oh. Hold on. No, I thought it's now that I think about it, there was this one time a world government ship drifted here in Asperia. The kingdom was thrown into a panic, blah, 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 blah. So the Celestial Dragons arrived. After that, Lady Candle was bedridden for a few months. And then Shuri was born. Yeah. The Celestial Dragon didn't come before Shuri was born? That's... It says the timeline is Celestial Dragon arrived. After that, Lady Candle was bedridden. Probably due to stress. Oh my god, so she was very possibly sexually assaulted. Then Leuven became king and married Candle, and then Shuri was born. Yeah, so I think it's likely Celestial Dragon did that. Grizzly Adams, thanks for being a Pirate King to your member for 34 months, man. Brook has experienced 3 separate monumental losses in his life. He explicitly lamented his failure after Pedro's death, and he has a devil fruit whose awakening should logically allow him to revive others. That would be crazy. That'd be crazy if he could do that. That would be insane. I mean, possibly. I feel like after you've passed over to the other, because Brook's soul, I think, didn't pass over to the other side, right? Is the concept? I would have to go reread the explanation of the Yomi Yomi no Mi again. Tiopucha 1, thanks a lot. If the contract is removed, Gunko will return to her true age, which is 70-something. Bonnie can make her young again. Good point! Bonnie can make her young again. That's a very good point. Yeah, I'm on board with the Celestial Dragon is Candle's Shuri's father. Now, I think that just makes a lot of sense. It just makes everything click. Yeah, it's pretty fucked, but we're getting the Ginny plot, like strong similarities between the Ginny plot line and strong similarities between the Kuma Bonnie plot line and then the Brook Shuri plot line. Or Brook, the same type of plot line, right? Yeah. really strong similarities, and it makes you think like Oda probably thought about a lot of both of these plots in Thriller Bark. I don't know if that's permanent. Yeah, that's also true. I don't think she permanently changes characters. Without context, I'd say Oda wouldn't go that far, but he literally already did this with Ginny. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. He's already gone there. I feel like it'd be kind of crazy, like, if it's just like, oh, well, now this is just a thing that's going to be regular in One Piece. Like, rape is just now blatantly regular in One Piece. That is pretty insane. That's a pretty big jump, you know? Because, like, now he's using it in back-to-back arcs for similar type of plots, you know? Hold on. What color's Shuri's hair? Is it blue, right? Yeah, it's blue. Okay. Yeah, I guess no clues there. Tiptio, thanks for the tune. Man, I hope there isn't more Celestial Dragons and TR children again. It's just a thing that Oda's running with. It's just a thing. It seems like, yeah, it seems like this is gonna be a regular thing in the story. It's kind of crazy. Um, yeah, it's very dark. One Piece. This is a new thing that Oda's starting to add into the story. He didn't like feel so much heavier. This whole page where the song is playing, this double page where the song is playing in the finale of the second to last, the last two pages of this chapter are great. The two double pages. These are just great. Absolutely phenomenal. So well done. And the reuse of the song, love that. This is just good shit. This was a really well done flashback chapter. Really well done flashback chapter. I just feel bad for Brook. Genuinely, his character is... Genuinely, his character is, like, just so fascinating to me now. Again, might be a little reactionary, but I think that he is maybe the best written Straw Hat now. In terms of just the overall concept of the character. If you piece together his full story, who he was as a child, who he was as a young man, who he was as a full-grown adult man, who he's become in his afterlife, essentially, the things that he has experienced, what keeps him going, what he holds on to, his outlook, the symbolism of music through it all. It's just really beautiful. Really beautiful. I'd say with this chapter, Brook has moved up to like easily top 5 favorite Straw Hats. My Straw Hat rankings are really hard to define because a lot of it just depends on... Because One Piece is so long, right? One Piece, like, Robin for a long time was top 2, 3 favorite Straw Hats for me. But then when Oda goes, like, what? Like 500-ish chapters, right? Without giving her much of anything and just treating her as like a background character and kind of flanderizing her a little bit, right? Like Black Maria was the first time we kind of saw Robin get some substantive sort of moments, right? Like that kind of remind you of what makes this character who she is, right? So like during that time, it like my enjoyment of the character kind of deteriorates a little bit because actually, so it's funny. It'd be one thing if like the character is just not present for 500 chapters, right? Like it's One Piece. Sometimes we don't see a character for a crazy long amount of time, right? Like Wiper is one of my all-time favorite One Piece characters, but outside of cover stories, he's just been out of the story since Skypiea, right? It's easier to still hold on to my love for that character when they're just not there, compared to when the author is using them regularly throughout the story, but just writing them in a very shallow manner, right? And that's kind of how I felt about Robin. Same with Frankie, right? Frankie still hasn't really gotten meaningful writing in a long time. So it's hard for me to maintain my enjoyment of that character and just be like, no, but just think about who Robin was from like the Alabasta, like from all of pre-time skip, right? When it's like throughout post-time skip, she's just written in a very shallow, one-dimensional, flanderized manner. That sort of shifts into my new mental image of Robin, right? So then it just becomes hard to keep her in my top 3 favorite Straw Hats, because like over time it's no longer like, oh boy, like Robin's in this chapter. It's just like, yeah, Robin's in this chapter as like a background character who makes like an offhand comment or something like that, right? So the Straw Hat rankings for me are like hard to keep in place, because over time, if a Straw Hat's just like written really, really shallowly, like in a very shallow manner for a very long stretch of time, then kind of just starts to be hard for me to be like, yeah, Robin's still in my top 3 Straw Hats, right? If Oda gives her a sort of return to form, which I kind of felt like was starting with Wano, then that changes, right? But at the moment, I would argue it's not even really recency bias, because it's like this stuff happens over the course of hundreds of chapters, So yeah, it's like I always kind of look back at, I view my Straw Hat ranking, my mental Straw Hat rankings at the end of like pre-time skip or the end of Thriller Bark or whatever, as the most concrete image of what the Straw Hats mean to me. Because that was the period where, like, you finish Enies Lobby and every single Straw Hat is done justice. Every single Straw Hat is written to the fullest as to what the potential of the character can be, what they represent, given great moments, given great focus, right? So by the end of Enies Lobby, I feel like I have a clear image of what all of these characters are, and my general ranking of my favorites among them, right? And then we go through the next, like, 700 chapters, and it's like, maybe these Straw Hats are just treated like background props, or like one-dimensional, one-note, one-gag, one-liner characters for a long time. So it's hard for me to evaluate them at their fullest, Long-winded way of saying, like, right now, because of the way the Straw Hats have been written in, throughout the New World, I feel like Brook being one of my top few favorite Straw Hats at this moment in time feels right. I know that, like, in Robin's prime era of how she's being written, Robin I would still have above Brook. Nami, I think, like, generally Nami I've always really enjoyed, and especially by the end of Whole Cake Island, I was like, oh no, I think I got Nami right towards the top. Sanji at point. It just depends. It depends on who's actually gotten focus within the last, like, several hundred chapters, because Oda will just go a lot. Like, Usopp, for me, Usopp normally, for most of the story, has been, like, among my favorite Straw Hats because I really appreciate how he's written. But it's just hard now, because, like, for the last 400 chapters, like, think about that. Like, Dressrosa ended in chapter 800, like, by chapter 800, and that's the end of Usopp really getting focused, right? So it's been 400 chapters that Usopp has been a nothing character, and every time he has been kind of at the forefront, it's been to say, like, his generic negative cowardly things, right? So it's just hard for me to maintain that image of, like, yeah, Usopp at his best, like, Enies Lobby writing, Dressrosa writing, Thriller Bark, Arlong Park, like, in Usopp's well-written arcs, like Alabasta, he's just the best-written Straw Hat. I'll maintain that. I'll say, like, in story moment, like, excluding flashbacks and stuff, Usopp has consistently throughout the story had the best character writing scenes out of all the Straw Hats, most consistently over the first 800 chapters of the story. It's just been so severely lacking in the last 400 chapters that it's hard for me to keep that image of him. He feels different now. So, yeah, I'd say maybe recency bias, but at the moment, Brook has shot up my Straw Hat rankings. If I were to think back to, like, the golden era of, like, how the Straw Hats were written, like, if I were to think about holistically, like, the Straw Hats at their best, how much do I like each of them, then my rankings are probably different. I think Brook might still be top 5. But, yeah, anyway. Anyway. Let's get stream likes up to 100 real quick. The Evil Rowanite, thanks for the 5. Revoking the oh no. We covered this. Tipsy Treviso, thanks for the 2. Have we talked about Mars yet? It's an elephant. What? Mars? Am I crazy? What about Mars? Did I miss Mars in this chapter? I think I missed Mars. Where is he? Oh my god. Where is Mars? Also, why is there a dude that's randomly dressed like Roger? I'm so sorry. Where is Mars? Oh! Oh my god! That's Mars! Oh my god! I didn't even realize that's fucking Mars right there. Is that Mars? It must be, right? Like, it's the bird form. I thought that that's just like some crazy fire that's there. Like I zoned in on the actual, the characters in the scene. I think I processed that as just like some visual black flame and stuff like that. I think I didn't mentally process what that is, or that's an actual character. Holy shit. That's Mars. What the fuck? This is interesting. Oh my god. Emu possessed Mars, probably. Yeah, what is going on? Because like, how else do you do Dami Reversi? Can the Gorosei perform Dami Reversi? No, right? Damn, so Emu straight up sent a Gorosei and presumably a Holy Knight for this situation. This is crazy shit. Garling performed Dami Reversi in God Valley. That is also true. That is also very possible. So maybe they can? That's true, that's true. I didn't think about that. I guess I'm just like, why didn't the Gorosei do that on Elbaf then? Interesting, interesting. Yeah, really good points. But then, so killing a Dami Reversi character wakes them up, right? So, like, I got so many questions right now. So many questions as to what's happening right now. This is a great cliffhanger, honestly. Great cliffhanger. My question is, why is there a dude dressed like Roger? Is it just Oda being funny? I feel like it's just Oda being funny, right? It's like the second page of the chapter. There's just randomly a dude dressed like Roger, who also has the Roger mustache. Maybe they need Black Flames of Emu to Dami Reversi? Yeah, I don't know. It's bold, bold G Lodger. That's funny. Why Shiryu's dad there is the better question. It might be Shiryu's dad, the way One Piece is. Let's get Streamlabs up to 100 real quick. Let's get Streamlabs up to 100. Dami Reversi was casted through Mars by Emu. Yeah, it's possible. I wonder, does that mean that we're gonna get some focus on Mars this arc? Because like Saturn was a big part of the Kuma backstory, and then Saturn was obviously the main villain of Egghead Island. One Piece characters are generally retarded due to not being suspicious of the obvious demonic horns and wings. I don't really know what to say about that part. I think it's just like, we have reader privilege, right? So, like, I think you can't fully process, like, put it this way, like, in real life, if you saw, because we know the concept of Dami Reversi, right? Like, uh, in the One Piece world, characters have so many different like powers and abilities and stuff like that. Like, how are you supposed to know that because you've got wings and stuff like that, then that means that you're being possessed? You know, I feel like that's not a fair assumption to put on the One Piece characters necessarily. Um, shouldn't she also get a lot bigger? I remember that was another thing with Rocks. I think he increased in size, right? Um, yeah, I think it's not like I think okay, in real life is a bad example, but yeah, I think it's just like how why would you not just assume like, maybe this is the like maybe sure he ate a fucking devil fruit or something like that, Like there's it's just such a random thing that I don't know if you would just assume that like, oh, there's possession at work, demonic possession, because the concept of demonic possession is just completely uh completely new, like in the story we didn't even really get that concept. Tiptiu says Morge's inability to recognize Morge's inability to recognize Mars is a Luffy moment. Didn't you just comment like 50 times about the completely wrong timeline of the celestial dragon's arrival and Shuri's birth? I feel like that's a bigger fuck up, considering Brook gives a long ass monologue about that, whereas this is kind of just a silhouette that I missed. But it is kind of a crazy silhouette to miss because it's very. I think it's just like so much black flame on the side that I didn't even realize that like it's actually got a figure to it. This has got to be Mars because it's just the same as the throne room. I'm so curious, like if we're gonna get details on each of the like what each of the Gorosei are kind of like as individuals, because Saturn's the only one that got really fleshed out before. I imagine Garling is going to get fleshed out as well, so maybe it's Mars's turn here. JP, thanks for being a Supernova member for 38 months, man. Mars is the environment godhead. The fog stuff was him? Question mark. Oh, that's a cool possibility. It's tricky because the how do I say this? It's tricky because um the abilities that he's shown so far don't seem to lend themselves to that necessarily. So far he's got flight and like fire blasts, but maybe he's got more up his sleeve. I also wonder maybe it's the Holy Knight that's here, assuming it's a Holy Knight, right? Maybe it's the Holy Knight that's here that's got that ability. The man marked by flames we know has some level of like either weather or water manipulation. Could that lead to fog? I don't know. Julian Reed, thanks the 5. Why don't you guys judge CP9 for not assuming Stussy was possessed when she grew wings and sharp teeth and betrayed them? She's also obviously possessed. That's a really good point. Like, possession's like an easy thing for us to jump to because we saw in the first place that this happened, right? But in the One Piece world, there's so many different phenomena. I think it's not fair to just be like, oh, this is obviously something different? Ender Anami says random enough that you genuinely carry on as if they look exactly the same as normal. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Like, they should ask questions, like what's going on, etc. But yeah, just mind control, because mind control is not common in One Piece, you know. Um, so it's hard to just be like, well, characters should just assume it's mind control, you know? Like, I think this is the first case that we've seen really of mind control. The closest we've gotten is, and this is over like 1100 chapters of like exploring the Grand Line and you know, seeing so much shit, right? Like, it's really only recently that we've seen the concept of mind control, you know? Like, we've seen a million different abilities and cultures and contexts and phenomena, etc. Emu's the first character that can just like, yeah, like I keep saying, mind control, right? So, um, I think you get some leeway there. I don't think it's crazy. Like, you know, they should just know that. Like I've seen this sometimes. Like people talk, like, because sometimes you'll see a plot line in stories of like, a character being an imposter, right? Like they have the ability to like a clone or something like that, and it's like, well, how didn't they figure out that this character is a fake and a clone? And it's like, you know, just because somebody in my life is acting weird or not normal, my first thought is not like, oh, they must be replaced by some sort of like, some sort of clone or doppelganger or something like that. I think if you're in a fictional universe where that's established to be a thing, like, oh, there's clones and doppelgangers going around, then that's fair as a critique. But if it's like, this is the first time happening, then you're just like, oh, this person is secretly not like I originally thought they were or something like that, you know? So I think because mind control is just not really a thing in One Piece that we've seen, unless I'm forgetting something, um, I think it's fair to be like, oh shit, something's going on. Like Shuri's doing something, right? But it's a big jump to be like, it can't possibly be Shuri herself. Some other being must be like possessing her and taking control of her, you know? JP, thanks for the 5. Saturn's abilities weren't science, but he employed it via tech. Mars could just be using something to be deployed in the environment. That's a good point. I mean, so interestingly, Saturn's abilities were. No, they weren't really science. They weren't really science. But yeah, you're right. He employed it via tech, so Mars could be using a chemical weapon. That's a good point. Good point, good point. One Piece characters also got very low intelligence for the plot sometimes. Example, the whole wear a wig and no one knows he's Luffy type thing, or wear Kaido as clothes to disguise. Yeah, I think that's just the way Oda kind of writes, which is just like, yeah, just what Oda's. You can't look at One Piece with too much logic in mind. You just can't. The story just doesn't function. I say this a lot of times. You can't treat it as like the characters are gonna act fully logically, because he's emotions first. So what he wants is the dramatic scenario, right? He wants to create a scenario where it seems like Brook is led to believe that this princess who he like treated as you know, an apprentice, you know, like almost like an adopted child to some degree, right? Like she goes and kills her own father, Brook's benefactor, right? Like Oda wants the drama of Brook being made to believe that's happening, right? Because that is a dramatic scenario, right? Oda isn't gonna care too much about the logic of it, other than like establishing enough that it's like, okay, it's reasonable that Brook, in Oda's mind, it's like, okay, well, it's reasonable that Brook believes that Shuri is doing this of her own volition. And Oda just writes the character's level of intelligence to be that, and that's just the way it is, right? If you like, I don't want to say nitpick, but if you like look at One Piece and you're like, the characters should think like they're Hunter x Hunter characters, then the whole story kind of falls apart, you know? Hunter x Hunter characters, there'll be like pages on pages of the character like mulling over all options and possibilities in their head and then being like, and then testing out which option makes the most sense, and like theory testing their speculation and everything like that. One Piece is just like, nah, fuck it. Like Brook's just rolling with this, you know? Akash Bandus has finally caught a stream live. Good to see you, man. Thanks for coming through. Watching VOD at double speed to catch up. I really love this chapter, man. So I'm in a real good mood. Empty Mind, thanks for the 2. The Holy Knight in the room is the man marked by flames. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling that. It's the Holy Knight that Oda has, like, refrained from showing. And I feel like age-wise, he would be old enough to be seen at God Valley, you know? So I think this is like a special Holy Knight. I think it's a fairly strong Holy Knight here. Smoking a cigar. I'm trying to pick up on, like, what could this man's abilities and stuff be? Like, I've said before, I think the man marked by flames will have the Wind Logia. I'm like, does this guy look like somebody who would have the Wind Logia? I don't know about that. I feel like a Wind Logia user may not wear a hat because your hat would get blown off in the wind. I don't know. Also, let's get Streamlabs up to 100 real quick. Remember that one insane filler of a pirate controlling Luffy and Law through collars? Question mark. Wild shit. I know very little about that filler, but I think I peeked at some like just episode sort of titles or thumbnails during that time. Um, it was because I was actually planning on watching the Dressrosa arc in the anime because like obviously the manga was partway through Dressrosa, and I really like when how to explain this, like the post time skip reading experience for me was a lot of essentially me believing over and over again that the next arc would be better and deliver on the things that I was hoping for, which would be like pre-time skip style writing where you get heavy emphasis on the Straw Hats, a really emotional storyline for the Straw Hats where they like free a kingdom, yada yada, right? And basically like so Fishman Island, I was like, oh boy, maybe it'll be something like that. We get to Fishman Island, it's kind of like, okay, the Strahts are kind of tourists, right? Like, they're going to be laid back, deal with the problem with minimal difficulty. I'm like, all right, whatever. Warm-up arc, right? Took 50 chapters, a year plus of reading, but cool, whatever. Oda's getting the swing of things. Punk Hazard, I actually really enjoyed because it gave me a lot of hopes for the next arc, Dressrosa. I'm like, okay, Dressrosa, they're going to go fight Doflamingo. That'll be kind of the storyline that's like, you know, very dramatic, emotionally powerful for the Straw Hats. They're taking on Doflamingo, yada yada. That'll be really cool. Get to Dressrosa. Again, I was in Dressrosa really, really like telling myself, like, oh, I am enjoying this arc. I have high hopes for the arc. By the end, it'll be like one of the best One Piece arcs ever, yada yada. Getting through the arc, okay, half the Straw Hats are shipped off. The other half are getting basically no character focus. Law is still the centerpiece of the story for some reason. Oda's forgotten who he's writing about. And then there's like 50 million side characters, right? I still enjoyed Dressrosa by the end, but by the end I was kind of like, okay, Dressrosa, you know, it's not like in any Slobby or something like that, right? It's not even like an Alabasta, you know? So I was like, okay, you know what? That's fine. Then we get to Zoe. I was like, okay, you know what? It'll probably be the conflict with Kaido that really delivers on this, right? So then we get to Zoe. Zoe gets my hopes back up again. I'm like, okay, Oda's really saving up his dramatic juice for Wano. That's where it's going to be at. So all through Zoe and Whole Cake Island, I'm excited about Wano. Because again, I'm just hoping for the storyline that's going to be like pre-time skip storylines that are dramatic for the Straw Hats, very emotionally moving for the Straw Hats. Give me a reason to care about why the Straw Hats are fighting for what they're fighting for, etc. And we get through Wano, and then Wano isn't like that either. And it's just like, what am I waiting for? I feel like Elbaf is finally kind of that storyline, or shaping up to be, and the final war at least better be. But Oda's kind of regained a lot of my faith over the last couple arcs, Elbaf included. But yeah, a lot of post-time skip. I'll explain why I got on this tangent shortly. A lot of post-time skip was me basically like telling myself, okay, I'm gonna enjoy this arc because this will be the arc that Oda really delivers on like what he used to write pre-time skip arcs like. Or me alternating between that, being slightly disappointed, and then telling myself that no, it'll be the next arc that Oda does this, right? Like, you know what? We didn't get that from Fishman Island, didn't get that from Punk Hazard, didn't get that from Dressrosa, but that's because these are all arcs where Oda's just warming up. Okay, Kaido's the main event. We'll get that in Wano. So just me like holding on to hope and like breadcrumbing the whole the whole time. And then finally Wano just broke me to some degree, and I'm like, okay, so even this arc, 150 chapters, not to focus on the Straw Hats, but to focus on the fucking million random ass Wano citizens and Yamato instead. Cool. that kind of like broke my faith a lot, and you kind of need to get your faith broken so that then you can start from scratch with no expectations. And then Egghead kind of made me feel like, okay, never mind. Oda's still good at at like a million things, still waiting on some Straw Hat focus, and now we're getting into Elbaf, and it feels like we're getting that Straw Hat focus. Brook as an example, you know. So now my faith is being rebuilt from the ground up. Anyway, long story short, when Dressrosa, why'd I get on this tangent? Got on this tangent because like when Dressrosa was going in the manga, I was really trying to convince myself that I was very much enjoying Dressrosa and that I was really happy about the way everything was going. And so I was kind of like, Dressrosa, this will be the arc that I want to watch in the anime again. Like I was telling myself that. So I was kind of peeking at like, when is the Dressrosa arc going to start in the anime? And, Punk Hazard ends, and I'm like, okay, we're kind of getting to Dressrosa, but we've got this filler, which is like the most bizarre filler ever. It's like Luffy and Law with the collars, I think, fighting a Kung Fu Dugong. Which is like, I feel like it's so absurdly stupid that it's just almost like how do I explain this? It makes you think that there are people in this world employed at Toei who are like one of the biggest anime studios in the world, who are genuinely like the worst writers on the planet, or like the least intelligent writers on the planet. Like, isn't that crazy? I was like, how did they get jobs at Toei? Like, who do they have? Like, do they have like, did they just put like a monkey at a typewriter and were like, here, write us a fucking filler arc? It's like Kung Fu Dugong versus Luffy and Law. Like, what the fuck? It had hockey too. It was actually insane. It was actually insane. I feel like it's possible. I think there's a possibility. Here's my crazy theory, okay? I feel like there's a possibility that, like, as we know, One Piece used to do more filler arcs pre-time skip. It stopped doing as many filler arcs post-time skip and started just dragging the episodes out more and more. I wonder if it's possible that Toei made like a business decision and was like, we're tired of fans complaining about the poor pacing and telling us to do more filler arcs. So what we'll do is we'll just write filler arcs that are so absurdly bad that they'll stop asking us to do that. And then that way we can just go back to focusing on destroying the pacing of the show. Because it's easier. Like, when you don't have to come up with original storylines, then it makes it easier on the Toei staff, right? They can just take the chapters that exist, drag them out to shit, and then just feed the fans that slop, right? Obviously, that ultimately backfired on them because now they're having to redo the whole anime from scratch, but, it is what it is. But I think that's where that whole Kung Fu Dugong storyline, came from. JP, thanks for the 5. Brooke probably didn't think of mind control because Gunko is still talking and will probably make it sound like the Holy Knights enticed her with power. That's very true. That's very possible. Let's see how the next chapter plays out. Like, as long as... Because Dami Reversi... The tricky thing about Dami Reversi is that it's not full-on possession. It's not like Imu's inside Shuri's body right now talking for her, like happened in Elbaf, right? Dami Reversi just kind of changes how you speak and everything to be more evil, right? Like, that's what happened with Dorian Brogy, Julian Reed 6030, thanks for the 5. You hated Fishman Island, Punk Hazard, Dressrosa speaks for itself. You felt the Germa shit was pulled out of Oda's ass and didn't like Wano, so what's kept you reading? So I thought I explained a little bit, but one, Fishman Island, I did not like while it was happening, right? But Fishman Island, it comes after the most exciting period in One Piece history, which is Marineford and post-Marineford and the time skip, right? So there's a tremendous amount, like, after all that stuff, it's like, I'm never going to stop reading One Piece. That's so ridiculously captivating. Like, that gets you so hyped for the New World, right? So you're in Fishman Island, and I was reading Weekly, right? Fishman Island, especially Weekly, it was just rough. It was a rough experience. But at the same time, at that point, the excitement for the series overall is so high that I'm not going to drop the series over Fishman Island. There's no chance of that, right? It's more just like the feeling is like, okay, let's get past Fishman Island and get to the exciting stuff. Okay. That was the feeling at that time. It was like, okay, I just want to get to the new world at this point, right? Punk Hazard, I didn't dislike Punk Hazard. So the arcs that would get me the most excited are so how to explain this? Punk Hazard, Zoe, and Whole Cake, those 3 arcs I very much enjoyed. Because Punk Hazard was an arc that was clearly a setup arc for the next arc, right? So a setup arc is like, how to explain? It's set up for the Doflamingo storyline, right? So like I'm in Punk Hazard, and in retrospect, now I don't find Punk Hazard to be enjoyable to go back to reread. So now my opinions on Punk Hazard are actually lower than they were when I was reading. But when I was reading Punk Hazard, it felt like, okay, this is cool. This is setting up so many exciting storylines for the new world, right? I accepted during the weekly reading of experience of Punk Hazard that this is not going to be like some huge arc where they're taking down like some huge crazy villain, but it's set up so much stuff. It's like, okay, Smoker's here, Law's here. We're gonna go take down a Yonko soon, and Doflamingo, of all people, is the next next villain up on the list, and that's all really cool stuff. We're getting like the Underworld Brokers broadcast. You're seeing like Kid in them and the other supernovas. It just feels like this is setting the stage for the rest of the new world. So the setting the stage section is exciting in the moment because Oda doesn't have to deliver on anything. He's just getting you hyped for what's coming around the corner. So over the course of Punk Hazard, I wasn't necessarily like loving the Strats running around the laboratory like the whole arc, right? But the seeds that were being planted had me really, really excited. And I was just like, I can't wait till we get to Dressrosa. Okay? So Punk Hazard I enjoyed during that because I was like, I can't wait for what's up next. Okay? We get through Dressrosa. I didn't dislike Dressrosa, but I kept telling myself, like, I'm going to love this. It's going to be like the big first classic, huge One Piece arc of the post-time skip that I'm going to love as much as, like, Enies Lobby, Marineford, Alabasta, etc. And then by the end of it, I couldn't lie to myself. I didn't actually feel that way. Took a little, but I didn't dislike Dressrosa. It's just that by the time we got through the end of Dressrosa, Oda's now giving us hype for Kaido, right? So I'm kind of mentally recalibrating. I'm like, okay. Didn't love Dressrosa. Didn't love the fact that only half the crew was here and we didn't really get much focus on them, etc. I still liked it overall, but you know what? Let's take stock. It seems like Dressrosa is ultimately meant to be build up to the big showdown with Kaido, right? So I reframed it in my head. So even if I didn't love the arc overall on its own, I then reframed it as basically being like, this was another build-up arc, right? So if you keep telling yourself that, like, okay, Punk Hazard, this isn't the greatest arc in the world, but it's set up for something even bigger. And then Dressrosa, that was supposed to be the big payoff in my head. But then over the course of it, I was like, okay, didn't love this, still enjoyed a lot of it. And you know what? It's clearly set up for something even bigger, right? So I'm like recalibrating to be like, hold out hope because the thing that's really good is coming. The thing that's really good is coming, right? Zoe and Whole Cake, I loved because Zoe kind of like was a reset. It was like a reestablishing of like, it gave us some great emotional moments, gave us some lore drops, and it like framed the whole Wano conflict. So it was like, okay, cool. Wipe the slate clean from the whole Dressrosa stuff. The big stuff that Oda was planning since the time skip started, that's in Wano, right? So that's in Wano. So even if I didn't get everything that I'd hoped for out of Dressrosa, that's fine because Oda's saving the big stuff for Wano. So like, now a lot of hope is riding on Wano. It made me enjoy Whole Cake Island a lot because I knew over the course of Whole Cake that like, this is just a transition arc to Wano. So I'm not going in expecting like an Enies Lobby or Alabasta style storyline where we're going to have the whole crew there and they're all going to get big moments and they're all going to get fights and it's all like that stuff. I was like, okay, no, this is clearly like Oda's told us in advance that this is just a transition to Wano. So I enjoyed Whole Cake Island a lot for what it was. And I was like, if this is this enjoyable, then like Wano is going to be even cooler, right? Like even more high stakes, even more tension, because Whole Cake Island had a ton of tension. Like the Strats were under fire, like stressed, desperate throughout it. So I was like, this is going to be amazing in Wano. Oda's just building up to Wano beautifully. And so it's essentially my whole post-time skip weekly reading experience was a lot of basically like individual arcs enjoying them to various degrees. None of them are quite living up to what Oda did previously, but it feels like Oda keeps hyping up for the next thing and kind of establishing that, like, no, this is leading to a bigger thing, which leading to the bigger thing, right? And Wano is kind of the end of that train, because Oda even paints it out several times. Yeah, Zoro kind of paint out the picture of, like, we started here with Punk Hazard, then we're going to Dressrosa to deal with Doflamingo, and then finally Kaido's at the end of this train, right? You have the Wano Samurai, the Scabbards talking about how, like, the journey from Punk Hazard to Dressrosa to Wano is all one connected journey, right? Like, you have Law talking about that, right? So I'm giving a lot of grace to so many of these storylines not really being written the same way that pre-time skip was, because I'm like, that's fine, you know? Like, Oda's building and building to the big payoff, which is Wano. This arc is going to be a masterpiece, right? So then when Wano like, if you're asking what keeps me reading in One Piece, one, I just love the series overall too much. I'm never going to stop reading it, no matter how bad it gets. There's never going to be a world where I drop One Piece. But it can test my love for it, right? Like, keep in mind, like, I kept reading Bleach all the way through the end of Thousand Year Blood War, and in the manga, Thousand Year Blood War is, like, famously one of the worst manga endings of all time, right? But I kept reading just to see the train wreck. So nothing's gonna ever make me stop reading One Piece, right? But what kept me excited and in love with the series over this period of time is kind of like Oda's promise over and over of, like, the next thing is bigger, the next thing is better, the next thing is where it's really gonna be at, right? So even if some arcs I enjoyed in the moment, like Punk Hazard, some arcs I felt a little disappointed by, like, but still enjoyed, like Dressrosa. And then other arcs I was, like, really, really enjoyed, like Zou and Whole Cake Island, because they keep promising what's coming next is going to be really good. But at a certain point, all of those promises in my mind had to kind of be, not promises, but kind of like forget Oda promising whatever, but in my mind, at a certain point, we did need to get that big payoff arc that would feel like how Oda wrote the earlier pre-time skip storylines of deeply emotional, moving, dramatic plots for the Straw Hat crew that really made you feel a lot in terms of the Straw Hat struggle and conflict, right? So I'm giving a lot of grace and kind of being moved along through the story and my enjoyment and my love for the series by basically, like, kind of telling myself that Oda's building to a storyline that is going to deliver on all that, right? That, in my opinion, my personal opinion, did not happen with Wano. For some people, they think that it did. In my opinion, it didn't, right? So that's a good point. That's the point where it's kind of like, okay, now it's like the end of the road. Whereas, like, I gave a lot of grace in my personal sort of feelings towards the series in terms of, like, always believing that even if this arc didn't really deliver on what I was hoping it would, like Oda used to, that the next arc would do that. And we're always building to the big finale. So, like, even if this arc doesn't, even if the next arc doesn't, as long as Wano delivers, then, like, I'm going to be happy, right? When that didn't, that did break down a lot of my enjoyment for One Piece for some time. And so, like, it's kind of like breaking it down and then building it back up with Egghead. Egghead, I had a lot of trepidation as Egghead's progressing, because I'm like, I feel a little bit burnt by the story now. Again, I'm never going to stop reading, but I was reading Egghead. You can go back to see my earlier streams and chapter reviews throughout the beginning parts of Egghead. A lot of it was kind of like, I need this arc to sort of, like, rebuild my sort of faith in the series. And it did do that in a lot of ways, especially the Kuma backstory, the lore reveals, a lot of the outside world events, the Hachinosu raid. The only thing that I felt was missing for me by the end of Egghead was still focus on the Straw Hats. And now Elbaf has started finally doing that. So it feels like Elbaf is shaping up to be the kind of arc that I hoped we would be getting in earlier arcs in the New World. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question. Like, what do you call? Yeah, I hope that answers the question in terms of, like, what has kept my love for One Piece up. A lot of it was just belief that there would be good payoff, right? And then when that belief kind of fell apart to some degree, now it is being rebuilt. And now I feel very confident in the final war as well. Tapir Treviso, thanks for the 2. Reuven probably also got the STD since they spread. Oh, that's... Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's possible. Julian Reed says, okay, but have those promises been paid off? I think everybody's gonna have different opinions. Like some people will say like Dressrosa was the type of arc that they were hoping for in the New World, and that it checked all the boxes that they wanted, right? Some people will say that Wano did that, right? So it just depends on. So I'm just saying from my perspective, right? Have those promises been paid off? Egghead Island for me basically cemented in my head that Oda still has really really strong character writing that he can do because he's executing it for so many side characters. It established that Oda had planned out very well how the entire end of the rest of the story is going to go, right? So Egghead never felt messy to me in terms of like what Oda's doing when he's cutting across the world to all of these side plots, right? And then lastly, and then also just the reveals lore-wise, etc. So it did a lot of that for me. It did a lot to establish kind of like excitement again for what's going to happen with Emu, the Gorosei, and then also the Blackbeard pirates. So Egghead checked off a lot of stuff for me. But the thing that was missing was the Straw Hat Pirates component as well. And that's really what I craved since the pre-time skip, right? It was the one big piece that was still missing heading into Elbaf. And now Elbaf has been much more Straw Hat centric. The end of Elbaf is really going to show like, are we going to get a lot of meaningful writing for the Straw Hats, but at the very least, we've gotten a lot of focus for the Straw Hats in Elbaf. I mean, again, we are in a second backstory for Brook, the least focused on Straw Hat in the story traditionally. So that's a huge positive sign for Oda returning to form in terms of focusing on the main characters of the story. You forgot about Whole Cake Island? I think Whole Cake Island was really good. I've said this many times. I think Whole Cake Island was very good in terms of like actually focusing on the Straw Hats again. But Whole Cake Island was also a truncated arc in the sense that it only featured, like, it's treated as a transitional arc at the same time. So like most of the crew isn't there. It's not a storyline that's going to end in a very conclusive manner, right? So it's a combination of things, right? Like when I think of my favorite One Piece storylines, like an Arlong Park, like an Alabasta, like a Enies Lobby, right? Those are storylines that have really strong, focused character writing for the Straw Hats, and then conclude in a really powerful sort of finale, right? All the Straw Hats, or most of the Straw Hats, getting fights, freeing the land, or saving the day, like big triumph, etc. Whole Cake Island was like, because it's a transitional storyline, it had great character writing for Sanji, good character writing for Nami, good character writing for Brook, even Jinbei and stuff like that. Good stuff for Luffy as well, across the board. But at the same time, because it's like a stopgap arc, it's not going to conclude in some sort of really powerful, definitive way like an Enies Lobby or an Alabasta or something, right? Like, ultimately, they got to scramble and get out of there. So, Whole Cake Island ultimately can't quite live up to, for me, the same type of thing as those classic pre-time skip arcs have, but it does deliver. It's the only post-time skip arc so far that I would say Oda did justice to the majority of the Straw Hats in the arc. It just happened to be in a plot line where there wasn't going to be like a really powerful sort of resolution, right? It's kind of like a messy resolution where they get away. That's partly why I was so shocked by Wano, because I'm like, just one arc back, Oda's writing such powerful, dramatic storylines for the Straw Hats. And he's putting the Straw Hats under fire and testing them. And you just read the whole, like, latter half of the arc, and there is a great deal of tension, desperation, emotionally harrowing experiences. Like, just read the entire scene among the Straw Hats after Pedro's death, right? So I'm just like, he did all this in Whole Cake Island, but then in Wano, it's like all of that writing is just absent for the crew. They're basically just side characters in the background for the entire first 80% of the arc. And then Oda just closes out the arc by giving them a bunch of fights, like checking off a box. And it's like, why? It's just baffling to me, because I'm just like, but why just not do both? Like, does that make sense? Like, that's what he used to do so well. Like, why just not do both? Why not? It's so frustrating, because I'm like, you clearly can still write great character-focused storylines for the Straw Hats. You just did it in Whole Cake Island. And you can write, an arc that has like a big grand finale conclusion with everyone getting fights, like we see in Wano. But the thing that made One Piece is that the arcs that are great would traditionally have both. You know, like in Alabasta, we're getting a lot of Straw Hat focus, and then all of that leads into their storylines concluding with this grand finale, saving the nation, getting fights, right? In Arlong Park, same thing. In Enies Lobby, same thing. They're not saving a nation, but they are basically defeating the world government, you know? You have both. You have the Straw Hat character focus, and then these character storylines develop and then lead into this big final conclusion where they all get their satisfying fights and battles, and we get this sense of triumph and this happy ending, right? That's just what was so baffling to me about Wano, along with a myriad of other things, but this is like one of the simplest core things, right? Forget the idea of tension, forget the idea of, narrative structure, yada, yada, yada. It's just like, why is it that in Whole Cake, Oda clearly demonstrates that he can still write great emotional, character-focused storylines for the Straw Hats, and in Wano, he demonstrates that, he still knows how to write a good set of fights for the Straw Hats to close out the arc, but in Wano, he just didn't want to have the other part of it. Why not have some of that Whole Cake style writing for the Straw Hats in Wano as well? Because that's just not been a thing for any of the post-time skip arcs. Like a classic sort of Straw Hat-centric narrative that concludes with, them having gone through a lot of emotional turmoil and them ultimately getting the payoff at the end of like really strong action-packed resolutions that bring to a close the emotional journey that they've been on. That's what I'm so confused about, because he can clearly do both halves of it. He just didn't want to put it all into one arc. That's what I don't get. I don't know. If these breaks continue, I may drop One Piece no matter how peak it is. I mean, you could just let it stack up. Honestly, like, you could let the chapters stack up, read them all at the end of the year. There's plenty of manga that I really enjoy. The breaks thing is confusing to me because I've never been somebody that like is like, oh, if I can't enjoy this manga, this is me personally, right? You do your own thing, but I've never been somebody that's like, if I can't enjoy this series like every single week, then it's just not worth it. Because at this point, I for most series that I enjoy, I kind of just like to let chapters stack up and then get a bit of a binge in. Morge, have you been watching the NBA Finals? I skipped the first 3 games, just absolutely no time. And then, my friend wanted to watch Game 4 with me. And I was super busy that night, but I was like, okay, let me try and make time. But then partway through the game, I'm checking the score just to see what's going on. And I'm like, oh, the Spurs are destroying the Knicks. This isn't even a close game. It's not going to be fun to watch. So I basically messaged him like, if it's close in the fourth, I'll, or like, I can hop on maybe at the tail end or something like that. Or maybe we can just, catch up another time or something. Like, we're going to have more games in this series, it looks like, because the Spurs are destroying the Knicks. So it's going to be tied 2-2. Then I check back in the fourth and I'm like, okay, it's actually close now. It's actually like within 10-12. So then I hop on the call with him. And the whole time, I feel like the Spurs are going to win. Because like, from my mentality, it's like, I saw that they're absolutely destroying the Knicks, right? And then I hop in, and the Spurs are still ahead. So from my perspective, it still feels like, okay, the Knicks, they're fighting back somewhat, but this is supposed to be, like, it's almost felt like a script. Not a script like the NBA scripted, but more like, yeah, ultimately, Knicks are going to fight. They're going to go down swinging, but, Spurs are going to close this out. They've got a still decent lead. And then it's going to be 2-2, and then we see how the series plays out from there, right? So for most of the fourth quarter, like, but he's got a different perspective because he's actually been watching the whole game. And so he's watched the Knicks, like, actually slowly, like, fight back. So, it's just different when you're actually watching rather than watching the score. Because he's very aware that the Knicks are, like, playing really on point right now, and the Spurs are not consistently doing anything, basically, right? So, throughout the fourth quarter, like, I'm actually, like, half in, half out of the game. I'm just talking about other shit, just catching up on life stuff. But he's clearly interested in the game. And so like it's getting down to the wire, and then slowly I'm just having this realization. I'm like, wait, dude, this is like actually really close. And he's like, yeah, like, and then we're both just like locked in, and I'm like, what is happening? Like, is this actually gonna like happen? And so it's one of those things where like his stream was like a little bit ahead of my stream, so it was like the weirdest viewing experience because I'm like having these crazy reactions, but I'm getting a cue because like he's having some reactions right like 5 seconds, 10 seconds before me. So like the whole time I still thought that the Spurs are somehow gonna win. And it wasn't really until like the final, like when OG fucking got that putback, I was like, holy shit, like what the fuck did we just watch? Like, did this actually just happen? That it was an insane game to watch. I wish I'd watched the rest of it, because then I could have really taken in the comeback more. But I'm really happy I watched the end of it. For what happens next, I mean, the simple prediction is the Knicks win. I do think that this is, I mean, the fact that the Spurs have home court advantage does matter here, because the Spurs do have to win 3 in a row, but they get 2 out of 3 of those games at home. Games, if they can force a game 6, I mean, it's the stupidest thing to say, like 1 game at a time, right? But if they come out swinging game 5, right, and they put their absolute best foot forward, if they've learned from some of the mistakes of this last game, right, then maybe they're able to win game 5, okay? Because they should learn a lot from this game, right? If they win game 5, there is just tremendous pressure on the Knicks in game 6. Pressure on both teams, right? But the Knicks have to feel like, okay, we've got to close this out in game 6 on our floor. Because otherwise, going to San Antonio game 7, you want to have home court advantage in game 7, right? So there's still, the series isn't over, but it's, the series isn't over, but it feels like it's over, kind of, right? It's just the situation with the Spurs having that home court advantage does make these next 2 games really, really dicey, I am also I'm still trying to evaluate Wemby as a player. I'm still trying to evaluate Wemby as a player, which is like, obviously he's going to be an all-time great, right? Obviously, like he's doing this in his 3rd year. I'm trying to evaluate him as a player right now. I think it's something I felt this way in game 7 of the Thunder series as well, which was just like, I want the best player to be like, it still feels like there's some inexperience or lack of consistency that's kind of a flaw here, because when it's down the stretch of these types of games, you're supposed to be able to give it to your superstar just consistently, right? Like not literally every possession, but that's kind of where you need your superstar to kind of be able to close it out. Wemby is not there yet, Like, it feels bizarre to think that he's supposed to be the best player in the world, but the entire end stretch of this last Knicks game, right? Like, you've got the lead. All you should have to do at this point, like, is be able to give it to your best player and kind of hope that they put you up enough that you're safe, right? But it almost felt like there wasn't even an expectation in my mind that Wemby is going to be kind of scoring and dominating. It was kind of like, okay, I hope Castle can do something, right? Like, it was like, you know what I mean? It was kind of like, I hope the Spurs team can figure something out. Whereas I remember, when I was watching LeBron, Steph, right? Like, it was kind of like, okay, this is like, get the ball to LeBron, like LeBron's going to close this out, right? Like, get the ball to Steph. Steph's going to make something happen, It's how I did feel about like Jokic for some time. Jokic, I'm a little iffy on nowadays. Even in the Thunder series, like SGA, even though he couldn't quite close it out at the end, like he was kind of the guy that, I still feared on the Thunder. And I was like, SGA is going to keep trying to make something happen. I hate SGA, least favorite player of all time, but I can still respect what he was doing at the end of the game. I think it's just weird for me that, when Wemby's really good and dominant, he just is really good and dominant. But at the same time, it's kind of like, for some reason it doesn't even feel like there's a mental expectation on my part that like when it's like I'm kind of like, oh, how are the Spurs gonna figure this out? Like, where are the Spurs gonna get their next bucket from? I'm not even like Wemby needs to be scoring every or like the ball needs to be in his hands every possession or anything like that. Like, it's almost like he's so inexperienced and raw that I'm kind of like, yeah, Wemby's not gonna be taking them home, right? So they're gonna have to figure something out, which to me, on reflection, I'm like, that's not how I would normally think of the best player in the world. So I feel like if the Spurs lose this series, then to me, this is like the first time in some time in the NBA where I think that it's just like wide open as to who the best player in the world is, you know? Because I don't think I'd be able to call him the best player in the world if they lose this series. You know? He might be the best player in the world literally next season or by the end of the summer, you know? But if you were to ask me like right now, draft a player, like you're drafting a team to win one game, like to win a game 7. I don't know if like it's like you die. Like, imagine my life is on the line. I die if my team doesn't win a game 7, and it's like, okay, but you get to draft a player, right? Game 7 for your life. Win one game to save your life. Who are you taking first? I don't know if I'm taking Wemby, and that's kind of how I look at what do you call? That's kind of how I evaluate best player in the world. Tiptia says it's definitely not Jokic or Shea. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it's definitely not either of them. Jokic kind of cooks Wemby every time they play, you know? I think that there's several arguments to be made for many players. I don't think it's definitely Wemby, is all I'm saying. I think you can make an argument for several players. Like, Shea actually played a lot better. Wemby outplayed Shea over the course of that series, but Shea outplayed Wemby by good margin in that game 7, you know? So you can view it different ways. And like, it's not, and I hate Shea, but it's not Shea's fault that his second best player, he didn't have J-Dub, and his second best player scored, 2 points? Like, Chet basically disappeared, you know? There's a lot more I feel like the NBA has evolved now where it's like, it really is more so, it's no longer just like best player is gonna take you home now. Like, I think it really is more team, like who has the better team around them, and you have to weight that a lot at this point. And part of the reason I'm holding that a little bit against Wemby is because like I feel like, yeah, this last game that I saw, it wasn't like Wemby lost because his team wasn't good enough. He was like, it was the Spurs as a whole that were really like, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, it was, it's not like he dominated the fourth and his team let him down, you know? Yeah, Chet scored 2 points because of Wemby. I agree. Like, there is a big component of that. But at the same time, like, there are other centers who don't just fold like that against Wemby. So like, Shea happens to have a teammate who is particularly terrified of Wembanyama specifically, you know? Like, that's all I'd say. Like, if you were to ask me, pick a player to save your life in a game 7, right? Like, who is most guaranteed to come out and like win you a game in game 7? I don't think I would pick Wemby, and that's always I've kind of thought best player in the world to some degree. It's literally not objectively not based on just outcome. NBA is a team sport. Yeah, but in this case, Wemby didn't lose because his team is worse. That's the thing. Like, he was not as good as he needed to be, especially in the fourth. You see what I'm saying? So like, that argument almost works the other way in the sense that like, if the Spurs had won this game, it wouldn't have meant automatically that Wemby is just like the best player in the world. It would have been like, no, Wemby kind of didn't even play that good in the fourth, and then the Spurs won it for him, you know? Julian Reed, thanks for the 2 more. Did you fuck with the NFL at all? No, not an NFL person. Sincerely, the NFL is too, like, it requires a lot of mental investment to get into the NFL, I've realized. Unless you're, like, indoctrinated from a young age, which is, like, I think, like, football culture is so big in the US, right? So, like, you're usually growing up watching teams and watching on Sundays and stuff like that, right? It is genuinely very hard if you're not growing up with that, I think, to get into the NFL. For me, like, if I'm looking back, right, because the NFL, it's a few things, right? The rules are more complex than pretty much any other American sport. Like, with something like basketball or tennis, you can kind of just watch and understand what's going on, like, pretty clearly. The NFL, sincerely, like, all the stopping, like, why is this allowed, why is that not allowed, like, the minutia of, like, just even explaining, like, the concept of downs and everything like that, right? Like, there's a lot of rules, and it's like, you get 6 points like this, 2 points, 7 points, yada, yada, like, 3 points. Like, there's so many nitty-gritty things, right, to understand rules-wise. And then the bigger thing is that there's so many players. Like, there's so many players to keep track of, so many positions. It's so specialized, like, so specialized. Like, you have players who do just one thing, like, one thing. It is very hard to get into the NFL just straight up. It's really hard. And so at points I've kind of been like, oh, I kind of want to try to get into the NFL. I was a fake Bills fan for like a while. It's a joke thing, like, between me and my old friend group. So I was low key a Bills fan kind of for a while. I would kind of tune in to watch the Bills basically, but not sincerely. And I've realized that in general, the spectator sports that I gravitate towards, it's geared towards simplicity in terms of, like, I don't want to have to learn a ton to become a fan of the game. So, for example, like, tennis was one of the first sports that I started watching, like, regularly as a spectator. Why? Because it's fucking simple to rules are simple, right? But also you can get an idea of all the best players pretty quickly because it's a single person sport, right? You're watching a match, it's just 2 players, right? You can pretty quickly learn, like, 20-ish tennis players that are basically the relevant ones, that, like, 10, 20 tennis players that are the relevant ones that you're watching out for in a given tournament, right? Easy, right? Similar with fighting games and stuff like, I prefer watching something like, instead of getting into something complex like League of Legends or something as a spectator sport, I've always liked watching, like, Smash Melee, because you just learn, especially I got into it during the Five Gods era, tail end of the Five Gods era, so there's, like, 5 big players, and then, like, a subset of, like, lower level players, right, that are also competitive, right? Then I got into NBA, and basketball is also similarly easier to get into because basketball is such a star-focused sport that you can start getting into basketball and really just have to kind of learn the star player of each team. And that's kind of like the face and identity of the team. And you can pick up on that pretty quickly, and then slowly you start learning, like, the second tier stars and stuff, and then slowly you get into learning the role players, and then you get a more clear idea of everyone, But football is just too much. American football, just too many players. Maybe at some point, like, if I got a ton of free time, I'll try and get into football, because, like, the NFL is something that, like, when I was young, I was just like, I don't care about spectator sports and stuff. Like, that's not my thing. I don't care about that. More of a movies and anime type of guy, movies, TV, and anime type of guy. But ever since, like, as I got older and then I did get into spectator sports, part of me for a long time has actually wanted to get into football, like NFL, American football, because it's like, there's nothing like watching sports. Like, it's just, or like, sports, esports, or whatever. It scratches an itch that even the best movies, TV shows, anime, or whatever don't. I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just apples and oranges, but it scratches a certain itch that these other things don't, right? Just the feeling of, like, not knowing who's going to win. The feeling of just, like, excitement at finding out, at seeing the story play out in real time with no script, nothing, seeing like the people you're rooting for, viewing them through the lens of like being protagonist, and then like the feel of like so many other people being in real time so invested in the same thing that you are, like it's awesome. Football, biggest sport in America. I want to be able to go watch the Super Bowl and actually give a shit about what's happening, Like that stuff is fun, but just the time wise, I don't have the mental commitment to actually get into and learn football, Julian Reed says, trust me, 90% of NFL fans do not know what's really going on past the surface level. Just cut a game on and watch for the big hits, crazy catches, and other crazy plays. I feel like I'm the type of person that I usually do like to at least know beyond a surface level what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to argue things like, no, that was a terrible call, or that was like, how can they call that like pass interference or whatever? Like, I want to be able to argue that stuff, and I want to kind of know the players and like have some. That's one of the biggest things with the NFL, which is that there's so many players. It's also harder for me to get invested into just a team. I think I've never had that before, which is like, even with basketball, in my basketball history as a fan, I sincerely have never been a true fan of like a single team and been ride or die with that team. I've always gravitated more towards like I got an NBA because Steph Curry became my favorite player. Like Steph Curry's 2016 season, Steph Curry was making headlines. I was rooming with my friends in college at the time. They were like, you got to watch this. And Steph Curry just had a play style that was so cool that even I as a casual was just like, this is sick. This is so crazy. The first big Steph game that I actually sat down and watched, by the way, craziest thing, was the Warriors versus OKC, that 2016 game. And for any NBA fan from that time, you will remember one of the most iconic regular season games of all time. It's because it was like a big matchup that was coming up. So like my roommate told me like watch this one. Like this is going to be a good game. Turned out to be like a fucking amazing game. And so, like, I got into, like, I was a Warriors fan to start with, but really I was more so a Steph Curry fan, And then it became a little harder once Kevin Durant joined, and I was like, well, even I know Kevin Durant is, like, the second or third best player in the NBA, so this feels a little unfair. And then slowly I became a LeBron fan. I was never truly a Cavs fan. I became a LeBron fan. I was never truly a Warriors fan. I think I was a Steph fan. And then over the year, like, when LeBron moved to LA, I became a Lakers fan, I think that's always been kind of a thing where I'm just not used to just rooting for a team straight up. For me, that's like, I know for a lot of people, it's like, that's weird. You're just rooting for one player. And it's like, well, I came from a background where like I would watch stuff like tennis or fighting games like Melee or something like that. So I'm more used to just rooting for one player and viewing them as the protagonist, To me, it's kind of like, it's harder to wrap my head around like, well, why would I just be a fan of like this set of jerseys, like, because I'm like, but the players get swapped out and traded around all the time, so like, what am I a fan of necessarily, right? Like, it's like the ship of Theseus, like, if I'm a fan of, let's say I'm a fan of the Knicks, but the players who are Knicks are like totally a whole different batch of players than who the Knicks were like 10 years ago, then what am I a fan? Am I a fan of just the organizer? Am I a fan of the owner? Who am I a fan of? Like, I just don't get the concept. I'm not from New York, so I'm not, I don't know, like, and I grew up in Maryland, so, like, football team-wise, we did have the Ravens, so, like, I thought it was cool when the Ravens won the Super Bowl. I watched that and everything like that, but, like, the area of Maryland I was from, I wasn't quite living in Baltimore, so it didn't feel like it's necessarily my team, like, I guess you should be a fan of your city's team, but I'm like, what if I hate all the players on my city's team, So I don't really get that. Tapius is more just a narrative fan. Yeah, like, and, I understand that's more of a casual stance, but I think I just fundamentally don't get I think, how do I put this? I think you enjoy sports much more when you are legitimately a fan of a team. Like, because your experience is just so much deeper and richer, because if you're a fan of a team, then you live with that team through like the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows. Like, you experience years of just watching them lose. You get excited when they draft certain players, and then you get hope, etc. So I fully respect that experience. Um, I just can't wrap my own head personally around that because to me it's just like I don't get what I'm a fan of necessarily. It feels like I'm a fan of a concept. Am I a fan of like a company or like a organization? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, again, ship a Theseus thing. It's like everything's swapping around in that organization. So like, what am I a fan of necessarily? You know, is it the owner? Because I'm not gonna be a fan of the owners. Is it the jersey? I'm not gonna be a fan of like a piece of clothing. The city, that's the one thing that kind of sticks. I'm like, I could get that. But a lot of my friends have been like lifelong fans of teams that they don't actually live in that city for. So I still like, I don't know. So you know, that's just me. Anyway, Julian Reed says, yeah, not gonna lie, being a fan of just certain players really isn't a thing in the NFL. Yeah, and that's the part that's kind of foreign to me because it's just like, so if I just become a fan, like I'm kind of like a fake fan of the Bills, and I have been since college. But I was like, if I sincerely sat down and that becomes my team, right, the Buffalo Bills. Well, I'm not from there, so I don't really have that going for me. Um, so what am I a fan of? Does that make sense? Like usually when I become a fan of a player, it's because I like something about that player. Like something appeals like play style wise or personality wise. Like something where I'm like, yeah, this is cool. Like I have something to root for here. But if I'm just a fan of a team, then it's like, well, play styles change over the course of like even 4 or 5 years. Like, you know? Like, so I'm not really a fan of a particular play style. I'm not a fan of particular individuals because those get cycled out. So I don't really get it, you know? The team. Bro Morge, what? But I'm saying, like, what is the team? The team's just isn't just the team. Like, what is the team? The team's just like whoever happens to be wearing that jersey at that time, right? So I'm like, does that make sense? Like, put it this way, like, if I'm a fan of the Bills, right? And let's say we hate the fucking Patriots or whatever, right? But then tomorrow, hypothetical, obviously this can't happen in real life. Tomorrow, like I'm a huge fan of the Bills, love the Bills, I love this team, and I hate the fucking Patriots. Let's say tomorrow, everybody from the Patriots, mass blockbuster trade. Every individual on the Patriots is traded over to the Bills, and every individual on the Bills is traded over to the Patriots, right? Let's go a step further. Let's say the fucking fire all the coaches and then rehire all the coaches. So like the Patriots fire all their coaches and the Bills hire them, and the Bills fire all their coaches and the Patriots rehire them. Okay, so just mass exodus swap of all the players, coaches, fucking offensive coaches, like all of these things, right? Down to the fucking GM. They all just swap. Am I like? So now I'm a fan of the Patriots essentially because now they're the ones that have the Bills jersey. So like what am I actually a fan of? That's the thing I can't really wrap my head around. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, I fucking hated all of these guys before, but now I like them because they've just changed their clothing. That doesn't really make sense to me. Does that make sense? It's about rooting for the organization, but why would I root for an organization? Am I rooting for the owner? I don't care about the owner. Like what does it mean? I don't get it. And treating it as your crew like in One Piece. Yeah, so like the example being like I like the Straw Hat Pirates because I like the Straw Hat Pirates as individuals, you know? If the Straw Hat Pirates just like kicked off all their members of the crew and brought in random members of the crew or like fucking Blackbeard Pirates members, am I still just a fan of the Straw Hat Pirates? Like you see why it's not a good comparison because like I like the Straw Hat Pirates because I'm become invested in them as individuals, not just because their flag happens to say Straw Hat Pirates, you know? If the Straw Hat Pirates fucking Luffy got rid of all of his crew and then brought in the fucking Blackbeard Pirates, I wouldn't just be like, like let's say fucking Luffy himself was gone, right? Like the entire Straw Hat crew fucking dies, and you know what? Great example. Entire fucking Straw Hat crew just retire, and now they're replaced with Demalo Black and his Straw Hat Pirates, right? That's essentially the same concept. Just wave the Straw Hat Pirate flag. Now you're the new Straw Hat Pirates. I'm not going to be a fan of the Straw Hat Pirates anymore. You know? I don't know. It's basically rooting for the Yonkos. You root for Kaido even though his henchmen change all the time. I think it's different because, like, it would be more like if the Yonko Crews had like an owner, like somebody that like, because Kaido we actually see in action and stuff, like, so there's a reason to like the Yonko. But like James Dolan, the owner of the Knicks, like I don't, why am I rooting for him, you know? Henchby says just turn your brain off and enjoy it. Yeah, but like that's the thing. Like to me it's already turning my brain off to enjoy rooting for like a player in the first place, because I'm like, why am I rooting for like this other dude I've never met? Why do I care that LeBron wins? You kind of have to like, I get it. Like you got to turn your brain off and like pretend that like because I like this player's play style and vibe and like maybe they're funny in interviews and stuff like that, and it's just like you attach some sort of sentimental sort of like, you know what, you're my guy and I'm rooting for, like, I want to see this dude win, you know? I think this player is the best player in the world. I want to see them fight their way through the playoffs and win, right? It becomes harder when it's just like a shirt, which is like when it's just a jersey. It's like, I just want everyone wearing these jerseys to win and I don't care who's in those jerseys. That's weirder to me because I'm like, what am I rooting for? I'm just rooting for the general concept of not, like, there's nothing, like, you get what I'm saying? Like, I just don't get what I'm rooting for there, you know? I'm essentially rooting for the owner, and I don't care about the owners, you know? Ben says it's their story. I'm from Chicago, and I'll always love Derrick Rose. Yeah, but the franchise but there's no such thing as their story, right? Because the franchise just changes so much over the course of time. Like, everybody who makes up that franchise is totally different now. Like, the Bulls franchise is totally different now than from, like, Michael Jordan's day, right? It's not really the same thing. Yeah, people like camps, they like teams, tribalism kind of thing, no? Yeah, so I get that. I 100% get that. But to me, it like all forms of tribalism are usually based around something, right? Sports, it's just cities, so it's like locations. So, and I get that concept of tribalism, but it's hard for me to root for someone if I'm not even part of that city. So my options are basically either become a fan of the team that's my city or just not really care, you know? Like, why does tribalism exist in other spots, right? Maybe you're all the same race, right? So like there's a sense of tribalism for, Indians, white people, black people, etc., right? So that's a form of tribalism. Maybe it's your hobby, right? People are, or preference, like we're One Piece fans, we're like Naruto fans, stuff like that, right? We're Nintendo people. You guys are what? Xbox, PlayStation people, right? Like, so there's different forms of tribalism that make sense. Countries, obviously, like obvious religion, but sports is literally just like, it's just, there's an owner. That's what the tribalism is, right? Like there's an owner who pays people to wear his shirts, and then you're a fan of whoever he's paying to wear the shirts, the city is the only thing that kind of like connects a sense of tribalism, I think, for sports fans of a team. So I can get behind that. That's what I'm saying. But like, I'm just not somebody that cares as much about my particular city. Like, I'm not like, oh, because I'm from like Maryland, I'm a huge Wizards fan. I can't personally get behind that. So I respect people who do. To me, it's just baffling if you're like a big fan of somebody from like of a team from a location that's not even your location. Because then it's like, why even have, like, what are you a tribal, like, where's the tribalism connection coming from, Atkins says, I think it's more along the idea of investment. For me, I just choose a team, then over time I become a fan because of that investment. Yeah, and I think that's the part that I just personally can't, like, trick myself into getting behind. Because I'm just like, whatever the, let's say whatever the Timberwolves are today, it's not even going to be remotely the same. Like, it's going to have no connection to what the Timberwolves are in 20 years. Like, totally different, or like executives, players, coaches, GMs, etc. It's just like, it's just the shirt. So then it's weird to me to be like, I'm a fan of the shirt above all else. Zolden3410, thanks for the 5. You see that they announced a Zelda Ocarina of Time remake? Thoughts? Would you want a 1-to-1 or them to bring in more modern mechanics? I think that this is like such a cool decision, especially because it's kind of like, so many people were like, we want to go back to basics after Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and everything. Like, how can they put out a next Zelda game that satisfies everybody? This was like the smartest fucking move. Like, everybody already loves Ocarina of Time, right? So fundamentally, like, this move is like a checkmate move, I think, by Nintendo, because the fans of old school Zelda straight up cannot complain about this, right? They cannot be like, because old school Zelda fans are like, make a perfect game that has dungeons and stuff like they did before, etc. It's like, okay, well, you guys already said that this one was perfect. This is the model, right? We're not doing anything new, so we can't really fuck it up, right? This is Ocarina of Time again, but just an improved version, like an updated modern version, right? So like so the old school fans cannot fucking complain about this, right? They cannot complain because it's just Ocarina of Time with probably better mechanics, right? So that's shut them up. And then for new school Zelda fans who fell in love with Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, most new school Zelda fans, I think, probably do want something a little bit different for the next Zelda game. So I think that, because Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom are so remarkably similar, right? So I think even with new fans, there's a sense of like, yeah, we like this stuff, but like give us something different, right? So for the old school fans who want the old school shit, but are prepared to also complain about Nintendo fucking up an attempt to go back to grasp to like the roots, right? This is the perfect move because it's like, old school fans, you are getting the game that you loved, but just a modernized version, right? Updated with, you know, Breath of the Wild level gameplay, right? So they cannot complain. They cannot complain with that, right? This is the structure and the style and the dungeons and the story that you said you loved. So that's good. And then for new players, a lot of them have not tried the old fucking like 64 Ocarina of Time, right? So that's going to be revelatory. So my fiance, when she was playing Breath of the Wild, she talked about how the thing that she really liked while playing was like the divine beasts. She really enjoyed every time she got to a divine beast and was like, oh, I liked it. Like, this is cool. And I didn't want to like ruin her enjoyment of Breath of the Wild. So I didn't want to like start talking about the old Zelda games, but I was like, okay, so if she played one of the older style games, she would really love the dungeons, right? So for new school fans who are probably also a little bit tired of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom similarities, this is going to be a really cool breath of fresh air. It's going to be them getting to experience the old school style of Zelda, but with, you know, the modernized quality of life stuff, I imagine, better graphics. And I imagine it's going to have a bit more, like, world will be enhanced, side quests and stuff, probably better combat, probably better mechanics. I think it'll just be touched up in a lot of areas. So I think this is phenomenal. I'm very, very happy with this because Ocarina of Time sincerely is like, I can't really pick a favorite. I go between what my favorite Zelda games are, but Ocarina of Time to me is the, like, for the classic style of Zelda, which is like the structure with the, you know, a certain, you know, two act story with dungeons and sort of like, you know, a core mechanic and everything like that. To me, Ocarina of Time is the best, like, they did it right the first time. To me, that's the best execution of that style of Zelda. And I think that Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword are basically different attempts to try and recapture that magic. So Ocarina of Time, I think, already did it close to perfect, but it does feel dated in areas. So now it's basically like taking the perfected Zelda formula and just modernizing it so like you can play it again now. Like, I feel like I'll get to experience that classic, in my mind, perfect Zelda formula, but now with just the modern day feel. So it doesn't feel like I'm having to go back to something very retro and a little, you know, jankier looking visuals wise, poor mechanics and stuff like that. So I think for me, this is exactly what, like, this makes me very happy, right? They've probably got some other more ambitious, newer style game in the works as well, but I love this. Yeah, so it makes me very happy. The one thing I'd say is I think Link looks weird. That's all I'll say. That's what I'll say. Yeah. I think that the, yeah. So a copy and paste game. I mean, this is what like. I'm not treating it as like a brand new game. I'm just treating it as like, oh, I get to actually enjoy Ocarina of Time again, but like a better version of it, which is really cool. Like I get to revisit something, but in a fresher manner. So I'm cool with it. Majora's Mask blows Ocarina of Time out of the water. Yeah, I like Majora's Mask better than Ocarina of Time. I don't put Majora's Mask in the category of classic Zelda formula as much. I view it as a sidestep. It does follow a lot of, the classic Zelda formula, but the time mechanic and the emphasis on the side quests, I think, makes it fundamentally different, To me, Ocarina of Time set a formula that is then sort of replicated by Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword. Um, and I think each time they got a little bit less creative with it. So I think there's a bit of a downward trajectory with that. But all of those are good games, though, in my opinion. Everyone is going to argue different. A lot of people feel like Twilight Princess is the best Zelda game nowadays. Like whatever. But this is my feelings, right? Twilight Princess was the first Zelda game that I completed, so I could say I have absolute rose tinted goggles and everything, glasses and everything with Twilight Princess. I still feel like after I played Twilight Princess, then I did Wind Waker, and then I did Ocarina of Time. As soon as I played Ocarina of Time, I was just like, this was just a better version of Twilight Princess, minus mechanics and Midna being better in Twilight Princess. Ocarina of Time's just better. But I don't know, I'm kind of rambling here. So Majora's Mask I don't put in that category. I put into it feels very different. Majora's Mask feels very different. So when I think of classic Zelda structure, I think of those 4 games: Ocarina, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword. Classic Zelda structure. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom I view as the new, completely different style of Zelda. And then Majora's Mask I view as Majora's Mask I view as like a twist on the classic Zelda structure. Akash says I've caught up to the VOD. What's up, chat? Ender says I have absolutely no faith in the second Ocarina of Time remake, and I utterly abhor its very existence. I don't know. I feel like as long as they don't try and change too much, just make things a little sleeker, modern, make it play a little bit better, tweak some parts, I think it'll be perfect. I never played the 3DS Ocarina of Time, so I don't really know about that. I don't know. Is Majora's Mask my favorite Zelda or Tears of the Kingdom? The thing is, I never finished Tears of the Kingdom. I put in 200 hours into that game, and then I didn't finish it. And I never played Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom was my first experience. So, I truly loved playing Tears of the Kingdom. It was such a great escape. It just felt so relaxing, so enjoyable. But I think I just burnt myself out playing so much of that game. So it's hard for me to evaluate nowadays. It's very hard for me to evaluate. Wind Waker is so time consuming. You know what's funny? Wind Waker for a long time was my least favorite Zelda, but there's a certain charm to it that kind of sticks in your head. There's a vivid sort it's a game that I look back on fondly, but I think it's more flawed than I think it's one of the most flawed Zelda games. If I were to kind of evaluate them as games, I think out of the 3D Zelda games, I think Skyward Sword is the most flawed of the 3D Zeldas, and it's still a phenomenal game. And then I'd say Wind Waker is right there with it in terms of flaws, especially the final act, the Triforce Quest, etc. But Wind Waker just has a certain charm to it that makes me feel nostalgic towards it. And I think because it's its own thing, when I think of Twilight Princess, again, first Zelda game that I ever played, enjoyed the shit out of it. I think it's really well done overall, but I can't help but feel intuitively that it's basically a ripoff of Ocarina of Time, but just they added more shitty stuff into it. They took Ocarina of Time and made it worse in a lot of ways, and that's basically, it doesn't feel like it has a clear identity. It does kind of try to be the edgy version of Link and stuff like that. People say the edgy Zelda game, but if you want edgy, if you want actually dark, Majora's Mask is better at it than that, Ocarina of Time, or Twilight Princess is more Hot Topic type dark, whereas Majora's Mask is actually there is a sense of heaviness and depth to the game, right? Which Twilight Princess doesn't have. Midna is the one shining saving grace of Twilight Princess, probably the best side character storyline of any Zelda game, or companion storyline, or whatever character, whatever you want to say, right? But in that vein, Wind Waker still feels like it stands out to me in a sense that like it has a clearer identity than Twilight Princess, and it stands for something like it stands for like very simplistic, childlike, carefree sort of low stakes Zelda, and I think that just has a certain sort of like I have a fondness for that in my memory. I remember when I was a kid, I got Wind Waker first. I finished Twilight Princess first, but I had Wind Waker first as a GameCube game. I attempted that game twice, dropped it both times. It had some of the worst decision making in terms of like laying out the game. Dropped it both times after the Forsaken Fortress at the beginning of the game because it's just so stupid for a kids game to start off with like a fucking stealth section. Like it's not fun, enjoyable. Like stealth sections, if you're going to include them in a game, put it at a point after you've actually got to enjoy some of the gameplay, because then it's like a fun twist on things. Not like when you're fucking starting the game off. Wind Waker has so many bad decisions, but again, it's just like the charm and general nostalgia and feel of it that still stands out to me. Oh, Ocarina of Time had a good story for me. I think Ocarina of Time has a has a great macro story. So like if you zoom out and look at the overall narrative, I think it has the best overall narrative of a Zelda. Like it's really powerful actually. Like the time skip, the world, the fall of the entire world that you experience, coming back to these locations that were once so bright and happy and seeing what they've come to. And you've come of age now, so now you can be the hero that you couldn't be as a child and right these wrongs and return the world to what it was. It's very powerful in that sense. But in the micro story, so in terms of like the actual scene to scene dialogues and interactions, it's very old. It's not like as deep. Like individual scenes are not going to be as deep or dialogue fleshed out or like emotionally moving as some of the newer games. So the macro plot, I would say the macro story is the best out of any Zelda game. To me, it's like a really cool macro plot, like a really cool story to just like think about out loud. But then like if you get into the micro of how it's actually executed, it feels very dated. So I think that's the biggest thing that I'm hoping the remake can fix. All right, we're going to take 2 more comments, and then I'm probably going to have to wrap up stream because we've been going for a while and I'm hungry. Akash Panda, thanks for the 10, man. Emo will get Luffy blood, and York will create a second Nika fruit. Oh shit, its color will be black like how Momo's dragon was pink. Blackbeard will get that fruit. Freedom fits him better than the control of Emu's fruit. That would be fucking awesome. That is such a cool idea, Akash Panda. That is a really, really cool idea, man. That's a really cool idea. Blackbeard being a dark Nika would be such a cool twist. I love that. That is awesome. And better than repeating Luffy fighting the devil again, you know? Tip Treviso, thanks to 2. When is the long law cosplay while high, etc. stream? So I was thinking of actually... Oh, that's a good point. We can hammer in the date on Monday. But I was thinking of doing that next Friday the 19th or next Saturday the 20th. I kind of want to do it because next Friday we have nothing, right? So like I think let's shoot for next Friday because there's no chapter. So I think that'll be fun to do. Let's do that next Friday. I think that'll be good. Yeah, let's do it next Friday. It'll be next Friday or... Yeah, next Friday is the best. Next Friday is the best. Let's do that next Friday. All right. Yeah. So Friday the 19th. Friday the 19th. I'll put out a little post about that as well. Zolden, thanks for the 5. Majora's Mask is such a perfect sequel because it doesn't replace Ocarina of Time while still making improvements on it, unlike Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom was basically a lot of what Breath of the Wild was, but more. I'll always say that if Tears of the Kingdom came out just on its own and Breath of the Wild didn't exist beforehand, people would consider it to be a perfect game. But it feels like they took Breath of the Wild and wanted to just build on that and kind of almost redo Breath of the Wild, an updated version, but it's not really the same. Yeah, Majora's Mask takes a lot of Ocarina of Time's like assets and then repurposes them into something very different, which I think people will appreciate. And I think a lot of it is also the feel, the atmosphere, the vibe, the darker route that a lot of the stories go while still feeling very, still feeling very Zelda and not like just super heavy. Like a sort of very melancholy feel throughout the game. It's very unique and hasn't been done in a Zelda game since, so I don't know. Yeah, good point, Tiptio. It's effectively the Galaxy 2 of Zelda, but I'd say the difference between like the Galaxy 1 versus Galaxy 2 and Breath of the Wild versus Tears of the Kingdom is I think like with the Mario games, right? Most of it comes down to like the levels, like just pure straight up like gameplay, right? So like the core concept is similar of like the excuse of why we're playing these levels between Galaxy and Galaxy 2. Like you got to go through planets and do this shit, right? Like but you are with Galaxy 2 getting a shit ton of new levels, right? Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom, you are ultimately getting the same Hyrule, but just with more stuff added and more ways to interact with it, right? Which is not really the same thing. Like any new Mario game, ultimately you are getting like a brand new set of levels. The levels are not the same as the previous game. So, I think that might be. I mean, what am I saying? Like, I think that's why with like Galaxy and Galaxy 2, people really debate which one's better, right? Whereas with Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, I think a lot of people lean towards like just preferring Breath of the Wild, even if on paper Tears of the Kingdom has more going for it. Yeah, Parking Podcast out. Parking Podcast out. Parking Podcast out. Hydrogen, thanks for the gold for 10 jewels. I still don't know what that means, but I appreciate it. Yeah, Ender Anami says Anuma has gone on record and said that pre-Breath of the Wild Zelda games are outdated and doesn't understand why anyone would want more of them. LMAO. I just think Nintendo has such a disconnect sometimes with why audiences fuck with what they fuck with. And it's like a double-edged sword. Like it's got its pros and cons that their mentality is like that. Because like Nintendo is always trying to think about like how to reinvent gameplay, and like they almost don't care about what worked before. Like they do care to some degree about what worked before, right? But they are always thinking like fresh, like we want fresh, you know? And that can allow them to like do crazy things like create Breath of the Wild and stuff like that, right? And they're like, now we really like this style, so like, wait, why don't you guys like it that we did it again with Tears of the Kingdom, right? I guess they don't always want fresh, but they are trying to be like innovative in a new way, even if it's not necessarily what the players are asking for. So like they're like, oh, people really like Breath of the Wild, so we're gonna keep this style because this is fun for us, and we're gonna do all this crazy stuff with like fusing mechanics, even though that's not really what players were saying. Players were saying we want dungeons and stuff, you know, like keep Breath of the Wild style, but can you give us some of the more old school like story and dungeons? And they were like, okay, we can kind of do dungeons for you guys, but what about Fuse and Master Hand? That's the shit that we want to feed you. So I think that's why Nintendo has been able to, like, they can do so well at points and like really break new ground, but at the same time be totally off base with like what their audience actually wants. And like by continuing to do things their own way and not as much listening to the audience, they do get, you know, big breakout successes and like that transform gaming, but at the same time they get a lot of misses as well. So, you know, I think that they shouldn't change how they're doing things, but it can still be really frustrating, you know? Like, I still want them to make another game like Melee, but they don't want to do that. So, you know. Akash Bandit, thanks for the 5. Also, since I missed a lot of previous streams, belated congratulations to both of you on your engagement. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Glad to see you back in streams, man. Hope you can catch more. And that is a good reminder. I was supposed to call stream an hour ago, so my fiance is probably pretty hungry right now. So we're going to hop off and yeah, we're gonna hop off